Fox News. We'll get perspective from media analyst Brian Stelter, formerly of CNN himself. Then we'll get your thoughts on Fox News without the toxic Tucker Carlson as we head into another toxic presidential election.
I'm Marjorie Egan. A modern-day Rosie Ruiz-style scandal is roiling the world of ultra-marathon running after a woman hopped into her friend's car halfway through a 50-mile race across England. The runner's calling it a miscommunication. We'll ask NBC Sports' Boston's Trenny Casey if she's buying the excuse. Then a little later, we'll be joined by Boston investor and philanthropist Peter Lynch in a rare media appearance. All that coming up, Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Biden is making it official. He's seeking a second term in office. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports today's announcement sets the stage for a potential rematch against his predecessor, former President Donald Trump.
In a video announcement, President Biden framed the 2024 election in stark terms. More freedom or less freedom?
Around the country, MAGA extremists are lining up to take on those bedrock freedoms, cutting Social Security that you paid for your entire life while cutting taxes from the very wealthy, dictating what health care decisions women can make, banning books, and telling people who they can love.
The contest has so far been dominated on the Republican side by former President Donald Trump, who launched his bid last November. While Trump remains the frontrunner for the GOP nomination, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and former Vice President Mike Pence are also considering likely bids. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
The World Health Organization is now warning of a high risk of biological hazard in Sudan. Either the warring Sudanese army or the rebel RSF have seized a key laboratory. Kate Bartlett reports on the danger.
A WHO spokesperson says fighters have thrown out the technicians working at the National Public Health Laboratory in the capital, Khartoum. The lab contains measles and cholera pathogens as well as the blood samples. Meanwhile, despite a shaky truce in the city earlier in the day, some sporadic fighting was ongoing. Foreign nations are continuing to evacuate their citizens. Britain has rescued its diplomats but is now looking at getting out other citizens, while the US is providing guidance on Twitter to Americans who want to try and make an overland crossing. Thousands of Sudanese have fled to neighboring countries, but a huge hike in bus prices is making transportation costs prohibitive for many. For NPR News, I'm Kate Bartlett in Johannesburg.
Artist and activist Harry Belafonte has died at his home in New York of congestive heart failure. He was 96. NPR's Elizabeth Blair reports throughout his life, Belafonte used his stature to speak out for human rights.
Charming, classy, and outspoken, Harry Belafonte was an international Broadway. In the 1950s, Belafonte was popular with both black and white audiences, rare for the time. Belafonte told NPR his lifelong activism came from his mother, a Jamaican immigrant who struggled to find work when he was a little boy.
Fighting back tears, she said, "Don't ever let injustice go by unchallenged."
Belafonte did not let up, fighting for human rights around the world into his 90s. Elizabeth Blair, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning with the latest from the GBH newsroom. Harry Belafonte, one of the greats. Rest in rhythm. A small veterans group released a report today documenting a pattern of physical violence by a neo-Nazi group in New England. The nonprofit Task Force Butler Institute is asking regional law enforcement and others to cite NSC 131 as a gang. We have more from GBH's Philip Martin.
Task Force Butler, founded by Iraq veteran Chris Goldsmith, investigates right-wing extremism and has prioritized NSC 131.
Most of the evidence that we have gathered has been posted by NSC 131 themselves. They have been operating throughout New England in what they feel to be such a permissive environment that they videotape their violent hate crimes. And thus far, law enforcement has had a very tepid response.
The veterans group tells GBH News that among other priorities is investigating white supremacists who've joined the ranks of the U.S. military, as evidenced by FBI arrest records of those who took part in the January 6th insurrection in D.C. Philip Martin, GBH News 89.7.
Harvard President Lawrence Bacow says he'll meet with a group of black student leaders representing those who sent a letter to the university criticizing Harvard's response to the April 3rd swatting attack at Leverett House. Bacow defended his decision not to make a statement in an interview yesterday, saying that he did not want to give the perpetrator more publicity than they already got. In sports, Red Sox Orioles today, and then tonight it's the Celtics and Hawks for the Game 5 of the playoffs.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include WETA, presenting the new history TV series Iconic America, Our Symbols and Stories with David Rubenstein, airing tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on PBS stations and streaming on the PBS app.
I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News 89.7.
Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library as we do every Tuesday and every Friday. And we are streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Marjorie. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I hope you're well, too.
Well, thank you so much. So, two stunning and somehow seemingly coincidental departures, actually drop the euphemism, Jim, firings from major media outlets yesterday, almost simultaneously. Tucker Carlson at Fox News, Don Lemon at CNN. We're joined by Brian Stelter, special correspondent at Vanity Fair, the author of Hoax, Donald Trump, Fox News, and The Dangerous Distortion of Truth, and the upcoming book, later this fall, Network of Lies, the epic saga of Fox News, Donald Trump, and the battle for American democracy. Brian's a former media correspondent and anchor for CNN and the 2022 Walter Shorenstein Fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School Shorenstein Center. He joins us via Zoom. Brian, it's great to see you again. Thanks for your time.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, great
Pleasure.
to talk to you. First, let me say I missed your show very much. I loved Hoax. I'm looking forward to the new book tremendously. So, why, Brian, was Tucker Carlson fired?
I think his bad behavior finally caught up with him. And what was that bad behavior? Well, we've seen little hints of it in a lawsuit by Abby Grossberg, a former producer on his show, who described a misogynistic, sexist workplace. And we've also seen hints of it in the Dominion legal filings. Back before Dominion and Fox settled last week, there were those legal filings showing emails and text messages from inside Fox. We saw Tucker Carlson insulting Fox journalists, for example. But here's the thing. There's so many other filings that were redacted, so many other text messages that were kept secret. But whatever those messages were, whatever Tucker was saying privately, his bosses have now read his emails and texts. They've now read his phone. They know what he said, even though the files were redacted for the public. So basically what I'm trying to say is Tucker's, his phone, was viewed by his bosses, and whatever was on it, whatever he was saying about his bosses or other people, I think that's ultimately what doomed him at Fox.
So, Brian Stelter, speaking of texts, I believe you sent one to Tucker Carlson yesterday. How did that come about, and has he responded?
Tucker and I used to be friendly. We've corresponded for years, but no, he has not responded to this message, nor has he responded to anybody else. It's been 24 hours since his firing was announced by Fox, and he has been silent. It's like the world's biggest loudmouth has been muted. But that's not for long. I am sure we will hear from him at some point soon.
You said you were friends with this guy. I've often wondered what happened to this guy. I mean, he was on MSNBC. He was on CNN before that. And on Fox, he's just turned into, doesn't like women very much, doesn't like black people very much, doesn't like, all these attacks on all these different groups of people. I mean, was he like that when you guys were friendly, or was this something in the last few years, or what?
I would say there were hints about his extremist worldview dating back a number of years. For example, comments that he made about race, even back on CNN's Crossfire, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I was interviewed by him on MSNBC back when he was an MSNBC host. Can you imagine him on MSNBC now? Of course not.
No.
The world's changed and Tucker Carlson has changed. And the way I view it is that he was, people always say to me, is he performing? Is it just an act, or does he really believe it? Here's where I come down on that. He was performing. He was just performing, but he did it enough that he talked himself into believing it. He talked himself into being a true believer. And now, the stuff that comes out of his mouth, I think he really does believe it. And that was not the case 10 or 20 years ago.
So I am of the belief that these hosts on Fox News, Glenn Beck, Bill O'Reilly, Tucker Carlson are all fungible. There'll be another Tucker Carlson next week, next month. So I don't think that'll change much other than the person sitting in the chair. Does Fox News change after Dominion and after this?
I do think Fox does change. Even Carlson's show disappearing was an immediate overnight change for Fox, because Tucker was kind of on an island doing his own thing. He was promoting conspiracy theories that other Fox shows never touched. For example, about January 6th, and Tucker Carlson always promoting this idea that it really wasn't that bad and there weren't actually guns in the crowd. He had all these lies that he would spread, smelly little lies over and over again on Fox. Other shows on Fox wouldn't do it. So now that island's gone. Now that version of Fox is gone. Still, certainly it's a right-wing channel that promotes an anti-Democrat and pro-Republican point of view. But, you know, Tucker was uniquely toxic, uniquely paranoid, uniquely conspiratorial. So I do think this changes Fox. And frankly, I think whoever's going to take over for him will not, at least in the beginning, have that same radical perspective. Now, maybe they'll grow into it like Tucker did, but they won't start that way.
But didn't Hannity and Laura Ingraham, the other lineup shows in the evening, also promote election lies?
When it comes to election lies, definitely. In fact, Tucker was one of the least offenders. He was not one of the worst offenders on that front.
Yeah.
It was shows like Maria Bartiromo's and Lou Dobbs that were mostly named by Dominion in that defamation lawsuit. But, you know, I think in some ways, you know, we're talking about different forms of radicalization. I think what Tucker was doing with white identity politics, with conspiracy theories about them always being out to get you,
right.
You know, he put on a show that was always us versus them.
Replacement theory.
What's that?
Replacement theory,
Yeah.
right? That was
Exactly. I mean, you know, think about the ways that he made cable news cruder, crasser, more toxic. And that's one of them, by promoting, you know, this anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that Democrats are trying to bring in immigrants to the country to get rid of white people, to replace white people. He was preying on his viewers' fears in a way that no other star on Fox does, and hopefully no one else ever will. But listen, we don't know what the Murdochs are thinking here. For all we know, the Murdochs are going to hire 10 Tucker Juniors and keep this going.
You know, you refer in your piece in Vanity Fair, we're talking to Brian Stelter, a special correspondent at Vanity Fair, formerly, of course, of CNN. You refer to it as an execution. Can you explain to people what you mean by execution?
Yeah, a television version of an execution is to get no sign off, to get no chance to say goodbye, to not get one last show. When I was at CNN, I had a sense that my show might be canceled. And then when it was canceled last August, I was offered a chance to sign off, to have a final show. They said, book whoever you want, interview whoever you want, cover whoever you want. We don't get to do whatever you want, say whatever you want on the air. And that's a real gracious thing. That's a respectful thing to do. With this case, Fox basically kicked him out. You know, maybe it's possible Tucker said, no, I don't want to sign off, but I don't believe that for a second. Every TV star wants to sign off on their own terms. So when it comes to Tucker, he was terminated. He came on the air Friday, said, see you Monday. And then on Monday, he was shown the door. That is a TV version of an execution, not to say goodbye, not to be on the air and say, hey, go sign up for my Substack or whatever you wanted to say, you know. And, you know, I think that's why he's probably being quiet now. He's trying to figure out exactly how he should resurface and in what way.
So based on your definition, Brian Stelter, of execution, your former colleague, Don Lemon, yesterday, about 11 o'clock, suffered the same fate, told after he finished the morning show, you're gone. According to him, no opportunity to even talk to the bosses. The bosses disagree with that. That was an execution too.
You are right based on my definition of the term. I think the difference, the only key difference with Don is that the writing was on the proverbial wall, that rumors about Don's future at CNN had been getting louder and louder. Frankly, I viewed that day as inevitable, that eventually he was going to leave. And when people would ask me about Don, who I have a great deal of respect for, I would say, I don't think he'll be on the show in 6 months. So for me, his departure was not a surprise. But you know, it's this. I feel for him. I feel sympathy that he was not able to sign off on the air.
And is he gone? Speaking of the why that Marjorie asked you, is he gone because women are past their prime after their 20s and 30s and 40s at latest, according to him?
You know, that foolish comment about Nikki Haley did do damage. It did damage his reputation. Remember that he was off the air briefly, but CNN had a moment there to keep him off the air. to fire him, and they did not do it. They brought him back on the show. So I don't think that was the deciding factor. In fact, I've been told by sources there was no single last straw moment when it comes to Don Lemon. It was a number of different factors, a number of different variables. Ultimately, the show was not gelling. He was on a morning show with two women who I adore, Caitlin Collins and Poppy Harlow. As a trio, it just was not working, and maybe the bosses decided, let's not try this any longer.
Brian Stelter, Jim introduced you, special correspondent for Vanity Fair. I was so looking forward to reading your coverage of the Murdoch Dominion trial in Vanity Fair. And, of course, the rug was pulled out under all of us that were looking forward to that right before the trial.
Well, except for Dominion. The rug was not pulled out from under them.
But there was a lot of concern that the way the settlement, and Dominion got a lot of money, obviously $750 million, that there was no requirement that Fox News hosts would have to admit the lies about the election. I wonder what you think is going to be the impact of any of this on the viewers of Fox News, who many of whom this is their kind of TV Bible, and whether the trial might have mattered had it gone forward.
I think the trial might have mattered around the edges. It would have been 6 weeks of embarrassing press for Fox, and some of that would have seeped through even to the Fox audience. But here's where I come down on this. The Fox audience has been told over and over and over again, and feels in the gut that this is a battle of good versus evil. As I mentioned, us versus them. It's good versus evil. And the evil ones, of course, are the Democrats, the liberals, transgender activists, anybody coming to try to change your America, your white America. So Fox is the good. Fox is on the good side of good. Fox are the good guys. And, good guys are flawed. Good guys screw up sometimes. Good guys make mistakes. But good guys are good guys. Fox is good. The other side is evil. That's the battle they believe we're in. Now, I think the world's a much more complicated place than that. But that's the portrayal on Fox. So if you believe you're on the side of good and you're battling evil, then you're going to let your side slip up. It's going to be okay if they went a little too far with Trump in 2020. I think that's ultimately where the Fox base comes down is, sometimes those hosts screw up. Sometimes they're not perfect, but they're fighting for me. They defend me. Now, again, I think that's a bunch of baloney, but that's the storyline. That's the narrative. And I don't see Fox really losing hold of that. The ratings would indicate the audience is as loyal as ever.
Brian Stelter, you just mentioned white America. Can we talk about black America for a minute, at least black anchors on television? Don Lemon is gone. Laura Coates was reportedly in line to host the 10 o'clock show. Reports are that's not going to happen. The new head of CNN appears to have had a rocky enough start through, his first 6, whatever number of months it is. That's going to add to the rockiness, is it not?
I'm interested to see, if Don Lemon has anything to say about that, because he did put out that one statement yesterday and he hasn't said anything since. I want to know if that's how he's feeling, the way you described it, with this marginalization of African-American talent. Now, CNN would say they just announced a brand new show with Charles Barkley and Gayle King, two of the most talented people in television, two African-American TV stars.
Once a week, though, too, right?
Well, that's once a week because they only want to do it once a week, right? They both have day jobs. But, so CNN would say, look at this great new program we're about to put on. But that point about diversity is critical, and it weighs on television executives, cable news executives at every network to make sure that the network they're airing programming reflects America, reflects the America that's watching.
So tell us about your book, the new book that's going to come out in the fall.
Yeah, Network of Lies. I'm doing it because I felt like I wrote Hoax too soon. I finished it too early. I finished it before Trump lost the election, before the big lie, before the Dominion lawsuit, before the pre-trial trial stuff. I basically want to take all the legal filings from Dominion and mine for gold. There are hundreds of thousands of pages. And I'm going to mine that for the gold, and I'm going to tell the narrative that hasn't been told yet about what happened inside Fox. We've all heard some of the quotes, like Tucker Carlson calling Donald Trump a demonic force, but there's so much more in those legal filings. I just need to spend some time mining through them. And now that there's no trial, it's even easier. I can get started on it now. Although Tucker Carlson being fired is something I never foresaw. I don't think anybody saw it coming. So I'm going to be doing a lot of reporting to find out exactly what happened there.
So this is probably a ridiculous question, but I'll ask you anyway, Brian. Is there any chance...
It's a hell of an intro, Marjorie.
Well, I think way back when Roger Ailes, who was also fired for sex harassment and these horrible things he did with women at the station, is there any chance of a more regular Republican show coming out in Fox where it's small government, fiscal conservatism? That's never gonna happen. It's just going to be stirring up the fear and the anger kind of thing going forward. There's not a retrenchment, you think, possible?
I think Rupert Murdoch actually wants what you just described.
Really?
Rupert Murdoch is more of an Asa Hutchinson, Chris Christie Republican than he is a Donald Trump Republican.
Yeah.
But that's not where the party's energy is, right?
Yeah.
That's not where the party's action is. The party's energy and action is more with Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump and Laura Ingraham. And so I think that therein lies the challenge. Therein lies the problem. It also gets to this eternal question about who's in charge, who's the leader. Does the narrative on Fox help move the base, or does the base move Fox? And lately what I've seen is the base moves Fox further to the right. It would be a good thing to see, to have Fox actually be the influential one and try to bring the audience back closer to a shared reality where we can have great arguments about fiscal spending, about tax cuts and abortion and other important topics. We can have those fights, but instead, Fox sometimes operates in this kind of fantasy world where they're talking about stories that nobody else has even heard about, and it gets to what Trump broke in our country.
Brian Stelter, it's great to see you again. We can't wait for the new book. Hope you'll visit us again soon, too.
Thank you so much
Thanks
for all
so
your
much.
great work, Brian. Great to talk to you again. Thank you.
Talking with you.
Good to see you.
Brian Stelter is a special correspondent at Vanity Fair, where we were hoping to read about the trial every single day. He's also the author of Hoax, Donald Trump, Fox News, and the Dangerous Distortion of Truth, which is a great book, and the upcoming book, Network of Lies, the epic saga of Fox News, Donald Trump, and the battle for American democracy. I think you have to wait a few months before you can
November,
actually see that
I think
one.
they talk on November.
But you can see his reporting, Brian's reporting, meanwhile, at VanityFair.com. Okay, we're going to continue this Tucker talk. We're opening the phone and text lines, 877-301-8970. You can call us or text us at that number to get your reaction on the departure, the stunning and surprising departure of the big ratings man at Fox News, Tucker Carlson. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Always asking questions. How can you share a tip with GBH's investigative unit? Investigative reporter Chris Burrell. The best way is to send an email to investigations@wgbh.org.
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 And our team will read those emails and talk about them and make a decision whether they're worth pursuing a story.
The GBH News Center for Investigative Reporting.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business by offering cybersecurity, internet, and mobile solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. Comcast Business, internet required. And Mass Cultural Council, committed to supporting the vibrant, creative, and cultural sector of Massachusetts. You can learn more at massculturalcouncil.org. That's massculturalcouncil.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan and Jim Browdy live from the library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. After years of spewing hatred and falsehoods, sowing discord on Fox News, as we said, Carlson is out, not necessarily for his role in misleading viewers, but it appears related to a discrimination suit filed by a producer who alleged bullying and anti-Semitism, and obviously there was the Dominion lawsuit. CNN's Don Lemon, also fired Monday, took to Twitter to express his shock over his own firing. That was, of course, after he said the thing about women beyond their 40s being past their prime. We want to know what your reaction is to both of these things, particularly the Tucker Carlson thing, and whether anything will change in the world of Fox News. Our number is 877-301-8970. I think nothing will change. I mean, as I think I said to Brian, I did. There was Glenn Beck, who was Tucker Carlson before Tucker Carlson was. There was Bill O'Reilly, who was huge, even bigger than Tucker Carlson in terms of numbers most nights.
But Bill O'Reilly was a much more fair person.
He was fair because he had the other side on, but he was, I would say, pretty extreme in terms of it. I mean, he's so trumped up. I mean, he went on a tour with Trump after he was fired, kind of thing. But yeah, I think you're right. He's probably a little bit. He was fair. He at least invited the other side on.
I don't think he was lying night after night after night. I don't think he was doing that.
Well, but the current issue, maybe you're right. The current issue is what happens after Tucker Carlson, and as he said, little mini Tucker Carlsons, whatever it is. I assume it'll be the exact same, and he or she will decide that I have to morph into Tucker Carlson to keep the audience that he had. So my sense is nothing changes, despite the fact that so many people are saying it's fear of lawsuits coming, whether it's this, is it Grossberg is her last name? I think it's her last name.
Yeah, Abby Grossberg. She's
foreign producer there, or the Smartmatic thing, whatever it is.
Yeah, you know what I didn't realize, the New York Times did a lot of reporting on this, and the Daily, my favorite podcast, talked about this, how Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, was on Tucker Carlson's show, and Tucker Carlson says, why don't you send the National Guard down to protect the southern border?
And he sent the National Guard?
And Greg Abbott then sends the National Guard down to protect the border, and how Tucker Carlson was going on and on about how Martha's Vineyard is all full of Democrats. They're looking for diversity. So why don't we send some diverse people up there to Martha's Vineyard?
That's when DeSantis did what he did?
That's what the idea was planted in Ron DeSantis' head after hearing that on Tucker Carlson.
Well, I would say far worse than that. That's pretty bad. Far worse. We've all read the stories, including from Brian Stelter, about how Trump, as president, would be sitting watching Hannity. Hannity would say something, and then he'd order that whatever Hannity said should happen immediately. I mean, it's just, but is your sense that Fox News changes? I mean, I guess one could argue they're somewhat chasing.
They're winning in the ratings.
Yeah, but they just lost $750 million. There's a Smartmatic suit. There's a Grossberg suit. There are a ton of other things. So maybe on the margins, they will be chasing. I don't know.
I think that the people that have been ousted, Bill O'Reilly, Roger Ailes, who started the whole thing. Those were, Bill O'Reilly got in trouble with the loofah sponge and going after these women at Fox. And this Abby Grossberg is related. We're not sure exactly the relationship between this and his firing, but I think they're certainly going to be cleaning up their act about that. But why are they going to be cleaning up their act? They're not.
But that's not an on-air behavior. That's an off. I'm not belittling. Right. It's horrible. It's an off-air behavior.
But the on-air behavior, I think the only thing is that they're going to be careful not to do things about Dominion and Smartmatic. They can get them in more trouble by defaming them. I think they're going to have to be careful about that. But there's this guy that Tucker Carlson went after that was on 60 Minutes the other night. That was he was singled out by Tucker Carlson as one of the anti-Trump people down at the January 6th rally. In fact, he was a pro-Trump person down at the January 6th rally.
He's thinking of suing them, by the way.
Yeah, he's thinking of suing too because he's had to leave. They've had to sell their home and move into a trailer because of the death threats they got. So I think that kind of stuff they might be a little bit smarter about because that kind of stuff could cost you $1 billion in the Smartmatic case.
Before we get to the calls, there are a bunch of texters who are saying we were totally biased against Tucker Carlson in that discussion and totally soft on Don Lemon. We didn't play up his sexism, misogyny enough. While I respectfully disagree, why don't you have the courage to call the damn show instead of texting? The number's 877-301-8970. What evidence you have of bias on our part, we'd love to hear, and we'll try to respond to it.
I'd just like to say to the texters, I'm not sure how you defend, how I should be not biased towards someone that attacked women, attacked minorities, did this horrible thing, these immigration
things. Try to explain it.
All these, and said thousands of people. Tucker Carlson said thousands of people died from the COVID vaccine.
He tried to undermine democracy. It's a real serious problem.
I must admit, I think he was a bad force in the United States of America. Ellen in the car, thank you for calling.
Hey, Ellen, what's up?
Hey, hi. So I only have one simple point, and it's this. Over and over we're hearing they've undermined democracy, they're lying. It's a prima facie case that that's what they're doing. So here's my point. Why does the FCC allow them to continue to have a broadcast license?
It's a good question.
That is a good question. And do you know the answer, Attorney Browdy?
I don't. And by the way, you'll be happy to hear that Ocasio-Cortez, I'm not sure what station she was on or who she was interviewing with the other day, said that the key perpetrators like Carlson and the station should be fired. The station, I don't know if she went as far as to say unlicensed, if that's a verb, because of their incessant incitement of violence. So you have an ally who's got a pretty big platform, and I'd check out what she had to say, and we'll check into what power the FCC would have around their broadcast, because frankly, I don't know. Ellen, thank you for the call.
But you could say for a lot of radio shows that have been similarly spewing untruths, and you might say inciting violence too, and they're allowed to broadcast. So I don't know what the answer is to that. 877-301-8970 is the number if you want to call or text us about the firing of Tucker Carlson. Is it Zion in the car?
Hey there.
Yes.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you for calling.
Thank you. Just wanted to make a quick point. I think Tucker was fired because clearly it seems like there's something they're not telling us, and it was probably going to be disastrous for them. Second point, just getting back to what the first caller said and what you were saying earlier, Marjorie, with like, do you think Fox will go back to a classic conservative kind of thing, or how come they're still able to have a license? It's because what Tucker does, and what everyone on Fox News does, is far too lucrative, and it makes too much money. And these people would absolutely see democracy fall, and they would see thousands of people die before they stop, before they take a hit to their dollars. And I truly believe that. People think I'm hyperbolic, but I don't think so. But I just think what they did is too lucrative, and what they still do is too lucrative for them, so they're not going to stop.
Well, you know, there is a lot. Tucker Carlson was making $20 million a
Was
year,
he?
I believe. Yeah, and the show is bringing in, I think, $70 million in advertising. The next person down the line, I think, was Laura Ingraham with $53 million in advertising. Then Anderson Cooper on CNN with $50 million in advertising. So they're making a lot of money for Fox News and a lot of money for themselves. And other people, including Brian Stelter's book about Fox News, talked about how they are very well paid people in general at Fox News. I mean, some of them have left. Shepard left, the reporter.
Voluntarily.
Yes, he left because he couldn't take the orders of what he had to broadcast. And Chris Wallace, son of Mike Wallace, who was a longtime Fox guy and a great moderator of debates.
He's great.
He left and went to CNN, and there was speculation it was he couldn't deal with the station anymore.
By the way, we're going to have to check more into this. Jamie, our colleague, just mentioned the obvious fact FCC has no power over cable stations. But at the same time, AOC, who's a pretty smart person, I just looked it up, was on with Jen Psaki, former press person for Joe Biden on MSNBC, said that there are federal laws, there is federal regulation in terms of what should be allowed even on cable. So we're going to try to get to the bottom of it, probably not in the next few minutes, but we will. Where do you want to go?
This text. Another bad week for liars. Last week, Fox and that crazy MyPillow dude. Now the week starts off with Tucker. The MyPillow guy, they've had to kind of rein him in a little bit because he's still spewing all these things about the election.
They've cut him off on that station on more than one occasion.
Well, they've had
while
to.
the
They just
Dominion
got
suit was pending,
yeah.
Well, you know, and he also, did we discuss on the air? Oh, you weren't here last week.
I was not.
The $5 million that an arbitrator has mandated that he pay. Oh, we discussed it with Sue on Friday because he put out a challenge. If anybody can disprove my data about the stealing of the 2020 election, and this tech guy, this data expert, proved that not only was he wrong, but that the data wasn't even about the 2020 election. So the arbitrator ruled he's got to pay him the $5 million that he offered to pay anybody who could successfully challenge his information.
Remember Sidney Powell, Trump's lawyer? She was on television all the time talking about the stolen election. And apparently Tucker was saying horrible things about her, that she was a nutcase and insane and all this kind of stuff.
I think far worse from what I've read, actually.
A lot of misogynistic things as well. Anyway, let's go to James in Rhode Island. Thank you for calling.
Hey, James.
How are you? Hi, how are you?
Good.
Fine, thanks.
Good. So what I worry about is that Tucker being fired is going to make him a martyr with his base, and that he's going to be scooped up by, the OAN or another, white supremacist network, and his rhetoric is going to be even worse.
Well, first of all,
so
OAN is tiny next to Fox News, and it would sort of be a step down, don't you think, James?
A huge step down.
Yeah, it's a little tiny thing.
He'd have to eat his hat, James, wouldn't he?
Well, I imagine he's going to want to still have a platform. He's not going to just be quiet.
Yeah, but again, Glenn Beck set it. Was it called Blaze? Is that what the name of it was? When was the last time you heard? Glenn Beck was huge, James. And you may be right. Glenn Beck was huge. Bill O'Reilly was huger. When was the last time you heard from Bill O'Reilly or Glenn Beck?
Well, I don't listen to any of those networks for not a long time.
Okay, well, that's an honest answer. But the bottom line is they're hard to find.
Well, you know what the bottom line is?
James, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
I mean, some people let it go to their head, and they
What
think,
do you mean?
well, I think Tucker Carlson maybe thought he was untouchable because he supposedly was such good friends with Lachlan Murdoch and he had huge ratings. I think
That's the son, right?
Yes, the CEO of Fox.
Oh, he is?
This is
Okay.
the other thing. There was speculation how much Rupert Murdoch was involved in this. Some people say he was, some people say he wasn't. I have no idea. But the bottom line is, it's everyone's replaceable, you know, and the station will go on just like it went on without Bill O'Reilly. And I think maybe Tucker thought that he couldn't be removed because he was so powerful. You know, it's the station that has the power, not the personalities.
You know, one of the things I was just saying to that caller, I'm not sure he can keep his profile up. You know, a lot of people thought that he would run for president this time, despite his public fealty to Trump,
Yeah.
even though he had contempt for him privately. The feeling was that was possible, and then who knows if it's
What did he call
impossible.
What did he call Trump? A demonic disaster?
Demonic
or something
disaster. He did. Demonic.
Something like that. Anne from Cranston, thank you for calling.
Hey, Ann.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I tuned in just at the end of Brian Stetler's section, and I don't know if he mentioned it, but I read earlier today on the net that Fox is in the middle of negotiating with all the cable companies
Yep.
to continue to be carried, and they're looking to increase the amount of money they're paid by the the carriers. So one of the questions is, are they trying to clean house and get rid of some of the major, what might we call, issues? This is in addition to all the other stuff.
Well, that's a good point.
He person to give him some leverage.
Yeah, he didn't. Brian didn't mention that. That's a really. I wasn't aware that there were renegotiations going on. That's a really important point. And maybe they thought he was too much of a risk, and maybe they think, like we do, that they'll find another Tucker Carlson just as easily who won't be quite as much of a risk. Good point, Ann. Thank you. The former head of the FCC, thank you to our colleagues, his name is Tom Wheeler, said, unfortunately, the FCC does not have jurisdiction over cable. We knew that. There's essentially no regulation of what's said on cable news like MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News. So we'll continue to check, but it appears at least the FCC has no jurisdiction.
And you know, the other speculation, of course, is that it looks better that Fox News fired Tucker Carlson in anticipation of the Smartmatic suit.
I couldn't agree more.
Which is for, what, $2.6 billion?
2.7, yeah.
And since Dominion won their suit, or they settled, but obviously the $750 million, I would say, is a winning day for Dominion. They were looking, it's the same situation with Smartmatic, right?
Well, I think it's a huge, I'm glad, very few people have brought that up. I think it's a huge point you make, because if there goes to trial, the ability of a Fox News lawyer to say, parenthetically, and by the way, one of the people whose texts were brought before you is no longer with us. He was dismissed on whatever it was, April 24th. Even if that's not technically relevant, obviously goes into the mind of a juror, and you might argue would mitigate what they see as the harm that was caused by Fox News. I don't know, but I totally think you're right.
Greg from Foxborough, thank you for calling.
Hey, Greg.
Yes, hey. I just wanted to add some speculation. You know, I thought perhaps Tucker Carlson's exit was connected to the settlement. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but he's one of the overt liars on their network.
Yeah.
I suspect that because I believe Dominion also is suing OAN and Newsmax.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm not 100%.
So-
They are? Okay.
They certainly started to. I don't know.
I know
if
they're
there's-
suing Giuliani, and I
and
think Sidney Powell. Yeah, but go ahead, Greg.
So assuming for a moment that they are suing the other two networks, Fox is able to cough up $0.8 billion and survive. I don't know that those other two networks could. So if those other networks get an award that puts them out of business, Fox News just improved their ratings by eliminating the two people who have been even crazier than them.
Well, that's a really interesting
yeah.
analysis, Greg.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. We appreciate it.
Well, I think that I know that certainly it's been written that those OAN and Newsmax can't afford that kind of settlement. So Greg may have a very good point, because initially, remember, in the days right after the election and the days right after January 6th, they were going to broadcast one thing. I mean, Tucker Carlson said it himself, that he was looking forward not having to talk about Donald Trump anymore, and that they did an about face because they feared losing viewers and money to OAN and Newsmax, so they decided to claim that Trump had won. And Tucker Carlson, as we know, had all the footage from January 6th.
He did.
Which he
from
claimed
McCarthy.
was a false flag staged by the FBI, and that was not about Trump supporters rioting or the insurrection at the Capitol.
The only reason I was smiling a minute ago, and then we got to take a break, is when the caller and you both talked about OAN. Do you remember Trump in his press conferences calling on the reporters from OAN who were like dumber than posts? And, it was like literally like panting from these very young reporters who were there basically not even to ask questions, but to praise the former and possibly future president of the United States.
Oh, please.
Well,
Jim.
let me tell you something. Read these polls, Marjorie.
Okay.
Read these polls.
Up next, we're going to switch to sports. Thank God. NBC's sports boss, Trenny Casey, is with us. We're going to ask her whether the fired Boston Celtics coach, I always mispronounce it, Ime Udoka. He has now been hired by the Houston Rockets. Is it too soon or not? You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Malaria kills 600,000 people a year. Now, groundbreaking vaccines could save lives across sub-Saharan Africa. We visit one community in Kenya that's been using a WHO-approved shot to learn about the potential and the remaining hurdles of malaria vaccines. Next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Prince Lobel, a full-service law firm anchored in Boston, committed to working hand-in-hand to provide a wide range of services on matters of local, regional, national, and international reach. PrinceLobel.com. And Gentle Giant Moving and Storage Company, employing athletes since 1980 and currently hiring to join their team. Gentle Giant is an equal opportunity employer. More at gentlegiant.com/careers.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now at the library by Trenny Casey. Trenny is an anchor and reporter with NBC Sports Boston and a BPR contributor. Hey there, Trenny.
Good morning, guys.
Hey there to you.
So, Trenny Casey, great to see you, as always. So everybody remembers that horrible moment when the whole country, well, not the whole country, but millions of people saw Damar Hamlin fall and was playing for the Buffalo Bills, and the players rush around, the EMTs run out. Well, here he is, Damar Hamlin, speaking at a Buffalo Bills press event just a few days ago on April 18th.
I've been on a journey, and I've seen, some of the top professionals across the country, and their answers to me were pretty much all the same. They were the same. And this event was life-changing, but it's not the end of my story. So I'm here to announce that I plan on making a comeback to the NFL.
So
That's
what's
incredible?
So what's the deal?
Well, I mean, what happened to him really was a freak accident, right? It happens. Unfortunately, we actually see it happen in lacrosse, soccer, and a lot of youth sports, where it's actually deadlier in youth sports. And if there's a silver lining to what happened to Damar Hamlin, is that it has significantly increased awareness about the needs of AEDs being available, and personnel being trained
Those
to use them.
defibrillators?
They're the automatic electric defibrillator.
Okay.
Is that what AED stands for? We should know.
Well, some kind of defibrillator.
It is a defibrillator.
Invented, by the way, by a local guy, Bernie Lown, who ended up winning a Nobel Peace Prize. The wonderful late Bernie Lown. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't know that. That's a fun fact.
Wonderful man.
But it saves lives. I mean, that saved Damar Hamlin's life. Having a number of medical professionals on the side. So he finally, I should backtrack here, he finally explained what happened to him. They ran a battery of tests to make sure, that they weren't ruling anything else out, that there wasn't a congenitive issue or something else. He had commotio cordis. Commotio cordis is, this could happen to you, this could happen to me. If I'm out and I'm playing a pickup, I don't do this, but if I were to play, a pickup lacrosse game with some of my friends, like some of my friends who played lacrosse in college, and somebody whips the ball at me and it hits me in the chest, it has to be at the exact wrong time.
Right.
Of like in between a heartbeat, it makes your heart stop. Incredible. So this could have happened, it wasn't like he was predisposed to this. He doesn't have any sort of lingering effects. And the doctors actually said at the time that he bounced back so much more quickly because he is a finely tuned pro athlete. He's a defensive back. So he is, cardiovascularly, muscularly, he just has the type of body type that can bounce back. I don't know if I would be terrified or not to get back out there. But then I think about for those of us who have been in car accidents, at some point you get behind behind the wheel of a car again. Most of us do, right? Like a lot of us have life-changing events. You look at the survivors of the Boston Marathon bombing, many of who came back to where it happened, ran these streets again in prosthetics or with people. I think for someone who's been through something life-changing, you want to take back what was taken away from you. And if there's no reason for him health-wise to stay away from football, why not try again? I mean, it was, it's in a way football, I guess I wouldn't say it saved his life, but it certainly gave him a second chance at life that not every person would get in that situation.
Can we stay on good news? We almost never have good news in the show, so we stay good news for a second. For people who don't know Trenny's non-sports work, you've been as ferocious an advocate around mental health issues as anybody I've ever known, and you deserve huge praise for it. The NBA appears to be getting serious about mental health stuff too, across the board, not anecdotally, like big time. What are they doing?
No, and they have been for a while. Like it should be said that the NBA, I think, was really at the forefront. And I think it started with guys like Kevin Love. Like that's the one who always comes to mind. He had to step away at the time from the Cleveland Cavaliers. He was suffering from pretty severe anxiety issues. And that just opened up the floodgates where the NBA now employs and mandates mental health care. And they allow for their players, their staff, their support staff to have at their disposal mental health professionals. And because this is a real issue in pro sports, right? Like it's one thing for you or I to say, hey, I need to take a little break. And even for you or I, if one of us had to say, hey, I've got to step away for 3 weeks and you need to find a replacement for me because I'm going through some mental health things, it's not always easy. There's a stigma to it. Like what is so bad? Why
John
can't
Fetterman, the senator.
Right. Why can't you do it? Why can't you just get up and even though, you seem fine on the radio, you seem fine on television, why can't you just do it?
There's a stigma. Really seem fine.
Okay, I knew we were going there. Thank you for that.
There's a stigma around it, and the NBA is trying to foster an environment that allows these guys, if you don't feel comfortable going to a team psychologist, you can go see someone on your own. You can go find someone, and they've done a good job of diversifying their mental health professionals, and in talking to a lot of, quite frankly, black athletes about this, that sometimes they don't feel comfortable talking to a white therapist because a white therapist who grew up in Brookline might not understand what they dealt with in their type of neighborhood and the trauma that dredges up and the other sort of outside factors that they have to deal with when they go home, whether it be family or friends who are asking things of them. I just think the NBA and Adam Silver deserve it. They're not perfect. No league is perfect, but they have done a really tremendous job, and it's trickled down. We've now seen guys in Major League Baseball take leaves of absences for mental health issues. We've seen it in the NFL. We've seen it where it has created an environment where Men in particular, which I think it's much harder for men to admit when they're going through something, men in particular have been able to say, and I've noticed a difference in my own friend group of guys being more willing to talk about their mental health and seek help for when they have issues.
You know, for people who think it's tokenism too, which is generally, for example, when the NFL does something on concussions or CTE, to me it's always tokenism, just the CYA. Some of these teams, I was reading down the list of the 30 teams.
Yes.
And some of them have 4 or 5 shrink psychologists on staff.
Yes.
Not consulting, on the damn staff. How many members of the team are there? 12 on a, I think on
12 on a, yeah. 12
whatever it is. I mean, that's pretty significant coverage.
And
Giannis, I can't pronounce his last name.
Giannis Antetokounmpo just
Very nicely
donated.
done. $1 million
It took me like years to be able to get that right, by the way.
From the Milwaukee Bucks, arguably the best player.
$1.1 million.
Good for him. That's great.
And I will say this too. I mean, and this is a personal thing for me, but I went to Marquette University, and Marquette has recently, they're redoing like their health and wellness center, and rather than it being just like a gym, like when I was there, it was like this nasty gym where you just like went out and worked out on an elliptical or went to like a class or a spin class or something. They are building a state-of-the-art building on campus that is going to include therapy rooms and mental health professionals, so that when you go there, and they're going to be interspersed with other medical professionals, trainers, physical therapists, so that when you go, if you don't want people to know why you're going to this building, they won't know. You'll just be able to go sit outside of a door and get mental health, help, and somebody else might just think you're going to see a teacher who happens to have office hours in this building. So they're trying really hard. I think a lot of institutions are trying really hard to make it a more accessible, less stigmatized way of getting help. It's awesome.
Okay, so having said that, we praise the NBA. They obviously care about the mental health of their players. They obviously don't care about the mental health of the women who work for the Houston Rockets. Now, Ime Udoka, who was fired here because of whatever an inappropriate relationship with a woman employee means, we don't know. You may know because of your position, but it's not been reported. He gets hired by the Houston Rockets to be their coach after a year. To my knowledge, we've never heard a word out of this guy as to what happened, what kind of treatment he's gotten. Are the women who work for the Rockets at any less risk than the women who work for the Boston Celtics?
Well, what I would argue, though, is we also,
how would you feel if you're a woman working for the Rockets today?
I probably just wouldn't date someone that's in my organization. Like, I think what's hard about this is that while we know it's inappropriate, okay, I'm going to use, because this has become public now, right? So Jeff Shell was the CEO of NBC. Yeah. He was having an affair with a CNBC anchor.
Oh, just canned a couple of days ago, right?
Just canned a couple of days ago. While it's inappropriate and you shouldn't do it, it's not harassment. It's not assault. Like, at what point? Like, I don't know what happened to the woman with the Celtics. I don't know if she also lost her job because it was an inappropriate. From the best of our knowledge, it was a consensual relationship.
I don't buy that can ever be consensual when there's that power differential. He's the most powerful person other than the owner.
That's where you and I disagree. I think that there are some women who seek out powerful men, and who, I mean, if that was the case.
Lewinsky equally responsible?
That was different. She was 21 years old, and she was an intern, and he was the president of the United States.
Well, in the world of the team, Ime Udoka is a pretty powerful.
But it's a whole lot different when you're, and from what I understand, this was a woman, I think in her 30s or maybe 40s, when you make a decision. If I make a decision to have an affair with my boss, I am a grown woman making that decision. Now, if it's constantly pressured on me, like that, those are the details we don't know.
That?
But
if you don't say, if you're that woman and you don't say it was consensual, there was no pressure, you may be saying to yourself, I'm going to be out of a job here, and I'm maybe never going to find another job in the industry.
That's possible. What I don't understand about this case in particular, we have no details.
I know, it's incredible.
From either side, the woman hasn't talked.
Do you know what happened and just can't say?
I have an idea of what happened, which is why I am like a little. I don't feel like he doesn't deserve another chance, because it doesn't. Quite frankly,
I'm not saying he doesn't deserve another chance on certain conditions.
It kind of feels like what happens in sports a lot. Like,
well,
there
it's
are
different.
a lot
I think it's important. It's not a hostile work environment. It's not.
Right.
It's not pressure. Sex or no job kind of thing.
Right.
As far as we know.
Wait.
The best of my knowledge,
because the Celtics disclosed nothing, other women who had nothing to do with him on social media Well, why isn't, if you're another woman who says, I will never have a relationship with the new coach of the Rockets, why doesn't that woman say, but if someone does, consensually, as Trenny Casey might say, I may be the one who's in the Houston social media identify. I mean,
listen, I've been in that position. I worked with someone who had an inappropriate relationship with somebody at the time that they shouldn't have. And when it became public, they used my picture.
That's great.
Because there were two of us at my station who were both blonde and we were both reporters and we both covered the Red Sox.
So you know what the guy should do, in my opinion? At the press conference announcing his hiring, he should say, without identifying the woman.
So he does speak today.
Here's what he does.
He
okay,
does speak
today he should say, here's what happened. Here's what I've done during the last year to deserve a second chance. And the owner of the team, whoever he or she is, should say, and here's what we're doing to ensure that women are not uncomfortable in this organization. Without that, it's ridiculous.
I will say this, both the Houston Rockets and the Brooklyn Nets, who had previously looked into Ime Udoka, the NBA has not punished Ime Udoka at all. It was strictly, and the NBA investigated it. They did not find anything that violated their, and they have pretty fairly strict rules around these things. Independent investigations and 2 teams looked into it, and they did not feel that it rose to the level of a firing. So to me, I also have questions, why did it rise to the level? Maybe the Celtics just have much higher standards than every other NBA team on planet Earth.
Well,
I don't know, but to me, there's too much of a gray area to say that this guy doesn't deserve a second chance.
And we've often debated, should these kinds of things be a life sentence?
No, if
so this has
depending.
been a year, and so your criteria is a certain amount of time.
Full disclosure, transparency, and even if not for the public, for the women who work for the Rockets, here's what I have done with my life in the last year, and I hope you will give me a second chance. I mean,
do you think everyone who has an affair within the workplace, if they're married or in a relationship, should have to go through that same process?
I think when you were fired from a job like this and other women were implicated who had nothing to do with it in that circumstance, yeah, you got to do 100% transparency. It's unique.
It is interesting that there's been no transparency on any side.
It's amazing.
It really,
to me.
I've never seen a story go away more quickly.
I was going to say the exact
same
thing. I couldn't agree with you more.
Which is why it makes me, who usually is like, this guy might not deserve a second chance, makes me wonder what happened.
Ray Rice punches out, out cold his girlfriend, then later his wife. What the NFL do? They slapped him on the wrist, kind of thing.
Well, they didn't. They slapped him on the wrist until the video came out.
Oh, was that this case?
Yes, remember the video came out?
I do. I saw the video.
It's always video that gets you in trouble.
Yeah, that's right.
And again, to the best of my knowledge, and I'm only hearing secondhand, it did not rise to that level in this particular instance. And I know some really good investigative reporters who have worked for the NBA for a long time, who have tried to find, right? They've tried to find that piece, that nugget that's been dug away that would say he deserved to be suspended for a year. And they've all had and I think the Houston Rockets and the Nets had a similarly difficult time.
Okay, so we only have a minute left. Last question. If you're a woman who works for the Rockets, would you not feel more comfortable if whatever the press event is today, Udoka did exactly what I said, and the owners do the same thing? Here's what happened.
They should.
Here's what I've done. Here's why I hope you who work for the Rockets are going to work with me and not be nervous being around me. They should answer all questions. And they're not going to answer a damn thing. Do you think they're going to answer anything?
At the very least, and maybe this will leak out, we'll find out. At the very least, there should be a private internal conversation with the women there.
You know what they're going to say today? They're going to say, we've investigated this.
We vetted it.
He has rehabbed himself. We can't tell you how. We can't tell you what happened. We can't tell you why you should feel comfortable. I mean, again, not everybody. Most people deserve a second chance if they earn it. In my opinion, I don't have any evidence to suggest he's earned it. That's all.
I would say that we also don't have any evidence that he earned or deserved a year suspension. Like, because we don't know the details. And the NBA and other teams have looked beyond it. I would say that to me is the tough part about this. There's such a gray area.
Area. We're out of time here. But anyway, thank you very much, Trenny Casey.
We had such a lovely start to this.
Such a lovely start, and Jim just wouldn't let it go. It's like a dog with...
Who do you agree with? Me? We only have 20 seconds. Me or Trenny on this?
I don't know, because I don't really know enough about it.
Goodbye.
Okay.
Gotta go.
Speaking with Trenny Casey,
and her straddling that fence, Marjorie.
Up next, 2 local developers looking to reshape how Boston gets built. We're going to talk with them up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're at the Boston Public Library.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Central Square Theater, presenting Angels in America, Tony Kushner's play about hope, struggle, and human connection in the early days of the AIDS crisis in New York. Runs through May 21st. CentralSquareTheater.org. What would it take for the U.S. to cut their carbon emissions to zero? NOVA investigates the innovative technologies that could help achieve the goal of carbon neutrality by 2035. Watch NOVA tomorrow at 9 on GBH2.
I'm John the Parker, engineer for Boston Public Radio, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
I'm Jim Braude, head on Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Two local developers are looking to reshape how Boston gets built. Richard Taylor and Daryl Settles join us next to talk about development in Roxbury's Nubian Square and closing the racial wealth gap through local investment. Then it's Nova's Miles O'Brien on their latest project, Chasing Carbon Zero, all about the race to cool the planet before it's too late. He'll join alongside MIT engineer Yet-Ming Shah.
I'm Marjorie Egan. As he's about to be honored for his work with the Catholic Schools Foundation, legendary Boston investor and philanthropist Peter Lynch will join us. Then it's CNN's John King with a reaction to Biden throwing his hat into the re-election ring, setting up 2020 round 2. Then we'll end with you reflecting on the possible demise of Tupperware. Do your overcrowded kitchen cabinets ever recover? How will Jim pack his lunch now? That's all to come ahead. Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Biden's making it official. NPR's Franco Ordonez says the 80-year-old Democrat announced today he's running for another 4-year term.
President Biden made his long-anticipated announcement in a 3-minute video, casting his decision to run again as a fight for personal freedoms.
When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America, and we still are. The question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom, more rights or fewer.
The announcement comes 4 years to the day from the launch of his 2020 campaign. In his video, Biden links images from the January 6 riots at the U.S. Capitol with protests over the Supreme Court decision overturning abortion rights. And he accuses far-right Republicans of trying to dictate health care decisions and making it harder to vote. Franco Ordonez, NPR News.
Washington is closely monitoring a new ceasefire in Sudan with many American lives at stake. Warring sides once again agreeing to halt fighting for 72 hours to allow humanitarian aid to get to those in need. Meanwhile, several countries evacuating their citizens and thousands of Sudanese people also trying to escape. Here's NPR's Emmanuel Akunwotu.
Both the Army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have announced yet another ceasefire to fighting which erupted in Khartoum and other parts of Sudan earlier this month. The U.S. government again helped broker the agreement. Previous attempts have failed to hold, but reports of reduced fighting have given a window for several countries to evacuate their citizens. The United States has so far only evacuated its diplomats and their dependents, leaving 16,000 registered Americans to leave on their own, with some guidance from government officials. Several thousands of Sudanese people are fleeing Khartoum and the most besieged areas of fighting in the country that have been destroyed by conflict between the two military factions. Emmanuel Akinwotu, NPR News, Lagos.
Tributes abound on social media for Harry Belafonte, who died today at the age of 96. NPR's Kristen Wright has this.
with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and generously giving financially to support the movement and advance racial justice. His activism and charitable work continued into old age.
My head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston.
Harry Belafonte was 96. Kristen Wright, NPR News.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsman Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. A new Omicron subvariant that first surfaced in India has made its way to the United States and is prompting the local medical community to reinforce the importance of vaccines. GBH's Mary Blake has more.
The CDC says this new subvariant, nicknamed Arcturus, is aggressive and more transmissible than other variants. It can cause conjunctivitis and is now the second most dominant subvariant in the country, accounting for nearly 5% of cases in the region. However, Dr. Robert Klugman with UMass Memorial Health says it's not causing more severe illness, and vaccines remain effective.
This is not as though we're seeing a rise in cases. We're seeing a rise in the percentage of this new variant. But in fact, cases are dropping rapidly.
Klugman does not expect a summer surge and says it's too early to know what the dominant variant will be in the fall. Mary Blake, GBH News, 89.7.
The Salem-based Satanic Temple is celebrating its 10th anniversary this weekend with SatanCon 2023. And although it hasn't happened yet, the organization is calling it the largest satanic gathering in history. Organizers say the event will be at the Boston Marriott Copley Place and will include satanic rituals, entertainment, discussion panels, a satanic marketplace, and even a satanic wedding chapel. The Satanic Temple and its members don't view Satan as an evil figure, but as one who has dared to question authority. And the SatanCon event has been dedicated to Boston Mayor Michelle Wu because she denied the group from delivering a satanic invocation at Boston City Hall. 56 degrees in Boston.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indeed, a hiring platform committed to helping businesses of all sizes. Businesses can invite candidates to apply, then schedule and conduct interviews in one place. Indeed.com/NPR.
I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News 89.7.
Rowdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Hour number 2, we are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. So this year, the Boston Real Estate Inclusion Fund launched, aimed to bridge the racial wealth gap through investing in real estate. We're joined now by two local and fairly legendary developers in the city who are involved with the fund. You're legendary. Is that not fair to say? You're legendary, right? Is he legendary? No, one of you is legendary.
No, we're trying to get there.
We're trying to get there. Daryl Settles was the longtime guy behind the great Daryl's Corner Bar and Kitchen, among other ventures. He's now the president of Catalyst Ventures Development. In Nubian Square, Richard Taylor, former vice president of development at FMR Properties, Inc., is presiding over a massive redevelopment project, Nubian Square Ascends. Richard, Daryl, it's great to see you both.
Nice to see you both. Nice to see you both
Thanks
as well.
for being here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Well, let's start with you, Richard, working on getting to the legendary status. Tell us.
He's older, that's for sure.
That's right.
But I'm bummed.
That's
Thank you.
That's right.
Touche.
Tell us what the Boston Real Estate Inclusion Fund is. What's it about?
Well, the underpinning of what both Daryl and I have been trying to do is respond to the 2015 Federal Reserve report, The Color of Wealth in Boston. And it stated rather dramatically that there was significant income inequality between blacks and whites as well as net worth. And so we began working on a couple of fairly large, complicated projects and thought that one of the ways to increase black and brown wealth in the city, and women as well, is to have them invest side by side with institutions on fairly big projects in the Seaport, for example, whether it's Omni Hotel or two life science projects, and in fact with Tishman Speyer and Austin Brighton. So that's the idea. So we have these projects and we socialize them, and folks can invest as little as $50,000, $100,000 over some period of time, because most people think it's too big, I can't afford it, when in fact they can.
You know, Daryl, if you can, by the way, that study, which I know everybody listening has heard about, that's the infamous study that's being updated by the Fed and
that's right.
Boston Foundation, $247,000 average white family wealth, $8 black families, 0 to 3,000 Latino families, etc. Daryl, I think one of the early projects that your colleague here just mentioned was the Omni Boston, which was used what is called the Massport model,
That's
which
right.
many people think was game-changing. Could you explain what it was and how important it has been to the work you two are doing?
Well, it's been extremely important. Most of the time, as Richard said earlier, minorities and women are left out of major deals. It's easy to find the smaller deals. And one of the things that people don't really understand, when you do these bigger deals, most of the money comes from institutional money. So a large developer doesn't really have to go out and raise a ton of money. They can go to family and friends and get that money. So that way, it leaves everyone else out. So the Massport model required that minority participation is at least 25% of a scale of 100 points. And so if you don't have a minority or women as part of your team, preferably both of them, then you won't get the 25 points. So it forced all the developers to step up to the plate to do that.
All throughout your team, not just at the top,
That is
people
correct.
like
That is
Taylor and
correct.
Settles and Sykes, but
That's
all
correct.
throughout the thing.
That is correct. That is correct.
Including
And so-
operations.
Yep. And also, this is all on public land, so it's not private land. However, there's a move now that the city and the state are pushing private developers to also include that in their proposals. But it's not as
Not mandating it
Not
yet.
mandating it, but it's understood.
So Richard Taylor, there's a great anecdote in one of these stories about you looking out in 1975.
Oh, boy.
From your
That's right.
house in what was then Dudley Square and
That's
looking
right.
down at the Prudential.
That's right.
And now it's not Dudley Square anymore, it's Nubian Square, and there's a big project afoot there. Tell us about that.
Thanks. I can recall as if it were yesterday, and I said to myself, because of the proximity, it wasn't a question of if development was going to reach Lower Roxbury, but when. And so it's really happening now. A lot of credit goes to the city planners and Roxbury Oversight Committee from the community. There have been about 7 parcels that have been being developed now, and I have a 2-acre site there, and I'm looking at a 300-seat performance hall because we want the Roxbury Film Festival. Yeah, it can be at MFA, but it should be in Roxbury. Some artist units, a lab training office, medical building, a 300-car garage. The square is in bad shape because there's no parking.
No parking, yeah.
But equally as important, we're developing a life science training lab. If we can't get our young people in this booming industry in Boston, which has an ecosystem that nobody can match, we'll never solve the income inequality.
Is Benjamin Franklin Institute involved in this? We had the head of it on a couple of months ago. Yeah.
She's building a 68,000, Dr. Isha Francis,
Yeah.
a 68,000 square foot new campus right next door to me, and her lab training will be in my building, along with Northeastern, Mass Bioed, and Roxbury Community College. It'll be the largest life science training facility in the city.
You know, Darrell, I assume that when Richard was talking before about you can invest as little as $50,000 in the stories about this, they've talked about equity crowdfunding from local residents. Is that what we mean when we talk about including local residents in these developments, or is there something else?
Well, it's like a 2-step component. Most of these deals require that you be a qualified investor.
What does that mean?
That means that you have a net worth of $1 million, not including your primary home. However, there are third parties like Small Change and Street Crowd that will do that for you. So you can add that component. And so with Brief, we're going to have 2 separate components of where investors can come in. The qualified investor and then the community investor are those that have less than $50,000.
You know, getting back to what you said a minute ago, Darrell, why isn't the city, I mean, you seemed optimistic about the urging on private land and they're going to get there. Why didn't they just do it? I mean, what's the holdup, the power of the private? I mean, you're smiling at me like there's a big story here. What's the answer?
No, it's not a big story. It is, Richard and I and others have been involved in this whole thing about income inequality for over 30 years.
That's right.
So what this city and the state has done in the last 5 years is remarkable. It took them a while to get there, and it took a lot of the right people to be in the right places at the right time to step up and to speak up at the right time to make this happen.
Who are some of those people that deserve mention?
Well, Dwayne Jackson was at Massport, and he was the head of the real estate committee. And so, the idea had been floated, and he pushed it, and Tom Glenn was there. And so
Who's
Tom,
head of Massport.
Head of Massport, and Tom is great. He's now the chair of the MBTA.
Steve Crosby.
Good luck to him, by the way.
Yeah, Steve Crosby was also, and Ira Jackson and their team were also pushing this.
Steve Crosby used to be head of the gaming commission,
That's correct.
and now is working on this issue.
That's correct.
So basically you're saying if you were involved in this for 30 years and for 25 years you were kind of whistling into the wind.
Yes.
Well, for 25 years we were relegated to small neighborhood deals.
Yep.
We couldn't do deals downtown. So now, as Darryl mentioned, we're involved in multiple projects downtown, bringing capital investors in. But it took, and I should also say that Mayor Wu deserves credit because with Arthur Jemison and Sagan Nui in their place, they're also looking at this, and now they're asking developers on a voluntary basis to give them their diversity components. And so I think what they're going to find is not much is happening, which provides a predicate to require next steps. So as Darryl said, you got to do it in steps.
Well, Mayor Wu has talked a lot about reform. I don't even know what we call it now. It used to be the BRA, the Boston Redevelopment Authority. Now it's named something
Boston
else.
Plan.
Yeah, whatever. But whatever it's called, she's talked about how it needs big-time reform. Is she right?
Yeah, regulations. I mean, if you look at what we have to go through, it's almost 2 years for large projects to get a building permit. So you're talking about 3, 4 more pre-development money that you have to spend before you get a building permit. 29 different meetings. People come to the meetings who were never any others. You got to start all over again. It does have to be cut, and I think they're hoping to do that.
You know, Darryl, we had Betty Francisco on yesterday, who on a smaller scale is talking about exactly what you're talking about, with the same goal to address this yawning, grotesque wealth gap. You know, until it's it, and she wrote a piece, I can't remember where it was, we were talking about yesterday. It's almost like people of color in high places almost exploded into power a handful of years ago. Until that moment, whenever it was, 5, 6, 8 years ago, how angry were you at being shut out of so many of the processes that Richard was just describing a minute ago?
Well, it's one of those things that I call it the inner circle.
What do you mean?
You know, Boston is very political, and if you're not part of the inner circle, you just are not aware of what's really happening. And I say this all the time, and not everyone agrees with me, but a lot of people just don't read. The information is there. I read all the time. And so you know what's happening, what's coming into the city, and you know who the people are that are involved, and you get engaged. And that way it gives you access to the table. And so, but now what has happened is that, you know, I was reading, there's an article that was in the Globe not too long ago, will white men never have power again?
Again?
I read that too.
Yeah. It's by Gene, right?
Right.
And I thought it was pretty funny, but, you know, if you think about, you know, the number of people that are in power today, it's incredible, people of color and women. And I was talking to one of the old presidents of Brigham and Women's Hospital in California this past weekend. And I shared with him that there are 4 black CEOs that are presidents of hospitals in the city.
Yep.
5 years ago.
By the way, in all fairness, I have to say, we
Yeah.
only had power for 250 years.
Yeah,
So
right.
I think you have to be a little
So we're still pulling our
cautious.
bootstraps up, right?
Go ahead. I'm sorry,
But
Richard. Go
I
ahead.
don't want to overstate this because people in position is one thing, but people who understand and take leadership on issues of diversity is yet another.
What does that mean?
That means just because you're black or a woman in a seat and you're acting like everybody and you're afraid to do something,
That's
you're
right.
afraid to make a change, to me, it's no different. I want to know what you're doing. One would think that because you come from a diverse group, you would have a better proclivity to change things. Many do not.
I agree with Richard. I'm going to add to that because I've always said, and Richard heard me say this 1,000 times, a lot of the people that were in power before, they just sat there. They didn't do anything. They were afraid. You know, it was a job. And if they said the wrong thing, they could have lost their job. And I think what you have now, you have a combination of people that are doing well, and then you have a combination of young people who are not afraid to speak up, and now all those parties are now working together to make things happen. And so you got a group of people who are willing to stand up and say, this is not right, this needs to happen, and we're not going to allow you to do this. That wasn't going on 10 years ago.
We're talking to Richard Taylor and Darryl Settle. Speaking of...
Go ahead. 20s and 30s.
I'll give you an example, though. I'm not sold on the power change yet. Kathy and I typically, before the restaurant shut down, would have lunch at the Four Seasons around Christmas. And we went in several years ago, and at a table, I'm not going to mention names, but all of you know, there are about a half a dozen Irish guys sitting there.
We're everywhere.
And I could tell these were power players. They were carving up the meat for next year. That still hasn't happened yet, Darryl, with the people that we're talking about. I mean, I'm telling you, you know, I'll talk to you after the show who they were. But they were sitting there cutting the deals. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
So names have changed, faces have changed, but people have to be comfortable with power. They have to be comfortable with power to understand how to use it and understand how to leverage it without too much personal risk. And people are still worried about personal risk.
Okay, so how...
Richard's generation, my generation. The younger people today, they are working as a group.
Yeah.
They hang out. They're at the Quinn all the time.
Yeah.
Every night you
Quinn
go there.
is a new private club on Commonwealth Avenue.
I've seen more African Americans in the Quinn
Yeah,
than
right.
I've seen in my whole life. In the back.
And I think that they're working on carving up the deals.
You know, speaking of people working together, and Darryl Settles, you said a minute ago, mostly the younger generations. When Shirley Leung from the Globe, who's with us weekly, wrote about you and this Mr. Sykes, who's the third head in this thing, she referred to it as a team of rivals, borrowing it from Doris Kearns Goodwin's book about
when the artists get displaced. So our position was, we're not going to put artists in that box. They're going to own their units. 15 affordable artist units for sale, and we have an artist lab of 6,000 square feet where they can do their work.
But what about the people that live in the apartments there now, when everything gets so snazzy, and it's gotten a lot snazzier in the last few years, but when it gets really snazzy, won't the rents
part
go
of
through the
our
roof?
argument, and Darryl and I have been pushing this so far unsuccessfully, we believe that most of the nonprofit housing units should be converted to ownership.
Yeah.
So that those people will have an opportunity to do a couple of things. Unfortunately, too many people regard affordable units as shelter, meaning you can't refinance to send your kids to college, you can't put a second mortgage in your house to start a business, you can't do all of that with affordable units. You have no ability to improve your asset and net worth. You're just there for shelter. That is not the American way. If you give me a discount to buy a unit because I have low income now, and the market approves, I should pay you back what you gave me, pay you some interest, and even split some profits. But my unit should not just be viewed as a shelter, it should be viewed as an asset.
Are you familiar, either of you, with Bruce Marks from NACA, who's going to be with us next week?
Yes, Bruce has done a lot of work.
Who has done, well, you said good work, because he goes to places like Atlanta and 10,000 people show up to get these incredibly low-cost, low-interest mortgages.
Yes.
I've never quite understood why that same thing hasn't been embraced here, Richard Taylor, because it would help get to the place where you say we need to get, no?
Well, what you have in our city is a very, very powerful nonprofit infrastructure. A lot of CDCs, a lot of CDEs, and they influence public policy significantly. Bruce doesn't have to fight that in other cities.
You're not saying something, Darryl. It appears you have a thought that you're keeping inside, are you?
Not a thought, but the cost of housing here, even if it's affordable housing, is still not cheap.
That's correct.
I mean, you talked about Atlanta. If you go to Atlanta, I mean, you can still buy something, it might be a half an hour, 45 minutes from the city, but something really nice for $300,000. You can't get a studio or half a studio in Boston for $300,000.
So, Mr. Developer, what do we do here to change that?
Well,
I don't have the answer to that.
Well, Richard? Well, part of it is, and we've been talking about it, is increasing transportation to markets like Worcester, Springfield, and further down the line, Fall River, New Bedford. Housing there is still comparatively cheap.
Yeah.
I know folks, for example, who commute to New Hampshire, they commute to Providence because housing is much cheaper. We have to improve commuter rail, high-speed rail, so we can get to the markets in Massachusetts where housing is relatively cheap.
Well, there's also legislation that Baker fought so hard for that's getting some resistance, but Andrea Campbell said, don't think about violating this, requiring rezoning of areas around the 170 communities that have T.
Yes.
The T there, whether it's commuter rail, etc.
The right thing to do.
Transit development, TOD, transit development, yes.
Well, we discussed this yesterday, that when the people who run the T come back from their homes in
Hawaii and
Wisconsin
Chicago and whatever,
they'll maybe get on top of extending the rail system.
Governor's all over that.
You know, since I know the governor is, but since you both have been here a long time, what was your reaction to that? I didn't even think, what was your reaction to that piece, not to mention Steve Poftak hanging up the phone on Andrea Estes, the reporter, when she asked about this? He was GM during all this.
There were nine.
Richard, what was your
managers.
reaction to that?
I was very troubled because I think when you are in public jobs and in public positions, you have to maintain the pulse of what you're doing. When I was Secretary of Transportation, I made it
for Bill Weld about 80 years ago. Give or take a couple of years. That was. We remember you well.
There's the legend. I'll take it out.
It was in the 90s, actually. Remember it well.
It worked pretty good when I was there. No, just kidding.
It did.
No, you have to get on the orange line, the red line, and I would take a bus. You got to feel and see the transportation business. You can't do it from afar. It's not so much public policy as it is public practice.
It's almost like malpractice.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to this?
It was that, and there was someone that was on the radio this morning that was commenting on it, and she said, like, how could they be in charge and not experience what we go through on a daily basis?
That's right.
If you're 3 hours away and you come to Boston once a month, you're not riding the T.
No, you're not.
You're actually having meetings. So you're not even experiencing what we're going through.
Might have a driver.
Yeah. Well, as we said yesterday, at least it was the lower 48. There was no one in Alaska.
Wasn't the lower 48. There was somebody in Hawaii.
Yeah, that's right. So Hawaii was there. I guess we drew the line in Alaska.
Awful.
Maybe that was
Hey, gentlemen, before you go, you a minute ago, Darryl Settles, were talking about the next generation that's much more collaborative. So young people are listening, particularly young people of color, who want to do what you do and want to get in without having to struggle for decades to get into the business. What do you say to them? What's the advice? What's the entry point?
Well, first we have an organization called the Builders of Color Coalition.
Builders of Color Coalition.
Yes, that was started about 2.5 years ago. That's doing a fantastic job of educating and networking people to the right people. Right. You know, the resources are out there, the information is out there, but if you don't have the right contacts to lead you into that area, you don't get the information.
What would you add to that, Richard Taylor?
Well, I think also checking with some of the old guard to understand things that we had to go through that they don't have to go through, but also connecting people and pushing them with some level of experience, but also get involved in some of these projects now while we're at least still can give a little bit of advice.
So before you go, how many times do you think Bill Weld was riding the T from Cambridge? There, Richard Taylor.
I refuse to answer the grounds.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Bill's my man.
We like him too. Congratulations to both of you. It's great to see you
guys.
both. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for being
Good to see you.
here.
All right.
Thank you.
Richard Taylor is former Vice President of Development at FMR Properties, Inc. Darryl Settles is the President of Catalyst Ventures Development. Together with Kirk Sykes, they run the Boston Real Estate Inclusion Fund. And we thank them both very much for coming in and taking the time.
Thanks, John.
Congratulations for what you guys are doing. Coming up, Nova is back with a new film about the real-world technologies that could bring our planet to zero emissions in the next 10 years. This is the most optimistic thing I've heard about climate change in ages. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting from the Boston Public Library.
We are purposefully looking for these uplifting stories.
The Joy Beat with Arun Roth.
I invite all of you to take a look at your community with fresh eyes, because you see the people in your community, the unsung heroes.
We want to hear from you. Tell us who you would nominate to be featured in the Joy Beat Spotlight.
There are people that you probably see every day who would be great nominees for us.
Call 617-300-2328. That's 617-300-BEAT.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Rockland Trust Bank. Their team is dedicated to bringing the vision of your business to life, providing support and advice tailored to your specific goals. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. And Unicare, a health partner for Massachusetts Group Insurance Commission members. Unicare is committed to providing health plans and benefits that can fit your life. Annual enrollment ends May 5th. Learn more at unicaremass.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live at the Boston Public Library. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marjorie Egan. We're streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. Scientists across the world are working on technologies today that would get our planet to zero emissions by 2050. It's all laid out in a new terrific film. Marjorie was really bolstered by this film from Nova.
Bolstered.
It's called Chasing Carbon Zero. Premieres tomorrow, April 26, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on PBS GBH2. Will be available streaming online at pbs.org/Nova, on Nova's YouTube channel, and via the PBS video app. We're joined now by director, producer, and host, we love this guy, Miles O'Brien, and Yetming Shang, who's featured in this film. He's a professor in the Department of Materials Science and Engineering at MIT and a chief scientist at Form Energy. Miles, Professor Shang, it's great to see you both. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much
on the
for coming.
program. Great to be here.
Well,
great to see you.
You know, as I was saying before, it was wonderful to hear some good news about all the scientific effort that's going into making a big difference in terms of climate change, because sometimes you get very depressed about what's not happening. So start with you, Miles. What were you trying to do in this production?
I was trying to do exactly that. that was my mission, you know.
Well, you did it.
I've been covering climate for a long time, really in earnest since the early 90s when I was a CNN science correspondent. And, you know, I felt like we were, you know, putting a problem bomb in the public square, lighting the fuse, and then running away saying, you deal with it. And, you know, journalists, we're not very good at solutions, right? We think it's wonky or boring or advocacy. And generally, over the years, we haven't done a great job of explaining the idea that there are technologies on the shelf that we just need to deploy with a few tweaks and a few pushes, and we actually can get to our goal. That's a message that I wanted to get out.
We did, and it's not just you, Miles, and Marjorie. Here's Melissa Lott, who's featured regularly in this film, the Director of Research at the Center on Global Energy Policy at Columbia. Here she is in the film.
Compared to 2005, which is our baseline, we've already reduced emissions by about 18%. And thanks to cheap solar, cheap wind, cheap natural gas replacing coal, and cheap storage, we're working our way towards 25% reduction.
Pretty good start. We're going to get to Yetming Shang in a minute, but staying with you for a minute, for people who may not even understand the terminology, Miles, explain what net zero means. I mean, what are we talking about?
The idea is to cut as much carbon out of our economy as possible. That's a big deal. And when we get to the point where we run into the real difficult problems like concrete and steel and aviation, we come up with ways to capture and sequester the carbon. So that at the bottom of the ledger should come out to zero. And that's our goal for 2050.
So, Yetming Shang, one of the beauties of this, I mean, what Miles does in this film, and correct me if I'm wrong, Miles, he breaks down the technology that is already accessible, that just has to be implemented in one fashion or another, and the technology that's in development, and that's where you come in. Most of us, Marjorie and I actually understand what a lithium-ion battery is. It's shocking, because we weren't very good in science.
We really don't.
Shocking. I get it.
It is shocking. But when we were watching, while wind and solar power were being celebrated in this film, enter you to talk about, well, what happens when weather conditions are such that wind and solar doesn't work? Lithium-ion batteries are great for your phone or your whatever, but not so great to sort of make bigger and more affordable. Then you enter. What is an iron rust battery?
Yeah, iron air batteries.
Iron air, pardon me.
Iron air batteries. We're coming out of a Boston winter. So look under your car, look on your bike, there's rust. Right? And so that red or reddish-brown coating, that's iron hydroxide. And the idea that you can let iron rust and actually get electricity out of it is kind of crazy. Right? The way it works is like this. You have iron, which is a metal, and in order to form that iron hydroxide, you actually have to give away an electron. The iron has to give away electrons. And those electrons hop over to the oxygen and hydrogen and form this rust. If you can get those electrons to instead go through this external circuit, now you have a flow of electricity. Right? Electrons flowing through a wire is electricity. Right? So that's how you can take iron that's rusting and get electricity out of it.
And it's cheap because I think, as you
it's just
say in the
amazing.
film, air is still free for the most part.
Right.
And iron, you talk about how much it's manufactured over. How close are we to the point that this dream, if maybe that's unfair, but this dream becomes a reality?
Yeah, if you visit Form Energy in Somerville or out in Berkeley, what you'll see are prototypes. We have a very technical phrase for these batteries. You just call them big batteries.
Big batteries, yes.
Okay.
Big
that
batteries.
we understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we sign off our emails. Big batteries. So a big battery in this case is the size of, let's say, a washer-dryer set. Right? And so you'll see these on test, and they've been testing for several years now before they get fielded. The key step at this point is building a manufacturing plant. And our first manufacturing plant is in Weirton, West Virginia. It's the West Virginia Panhandle that reaches up towards Pittsburgh. It's about a half hour from Pittsburgh. And the reason that plant is there is because there used to be a steel plant there.
That's great.
Oh, gosh.
Right? And, steel, you need iron. Right? And you need a way to get that iron in, which is by rail or by boat. And so to answer your question is we have to manufacture. That's going to take a couple of years to get there.
Well, there was a lot of talk about how there's tons of money to be made in this whole green technology. And I learned so much about stuff I didn't even know existed. Like we were talking about wind turbines and not have when it isn't sunny or it isn't windy, these floating offshore turbines that I'd never heard of.
Yeah, the idea, there's so many ironies in all this, but a lot of the technology...
Ironies.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
He'll be in the lounge on Thursday night if you're looking for him.
I
Yeah.
thought you two would miss that.
Thank you for your help, though. We appreciate it.
That's in the film, don't worry. But anyway, the idea that a lot of technology, which was kind of created by the oil and gas industry, including floating oil platforms, is now being adapted for wind technology, which is fabulous. So there are actually quite a few floating turbines in the North Sea. And it has been, offshore wind has been slow to happen here. You've been reading about it, the fixed turbine installations, which are going on right now, which are under construction. But if you want to build anything off of California, where the ocean's a lot deeper, or if you want to go farther out, you need to look at this floating idea. And the technology is pretty much there. University of Maine, they're working on this concrete structure that has counterweights in it. They put a scale model out there in the ocean for a full year, and it never really rocked more than 5 degrees. And it creates, obviously, you got tremendous wind resource. You can stay away from migratory patterns of birds, and it's really kind of an unlimited field. As Habib Dagher, the lead scientist there, put it, he said, if you look at the wind resource, east and west coast in this country, it could power this country 4 times over just by wind.
We're talking to Miles O'Brien, Yetming Shang. Yetming is in the film from MIT, and Miles is the brains behind the thing with his colleagues at
Wait a minute, I'm next
Nova.
to him and you're calling me brains?
That's a very good point, too. So, Miles, we talked about, so this iron air technology is in development. The technology is closer on these floating turbines. Let's talk about some of the technology that's there. For example, in our homes, in buildings, or in cars. Let's start with cars for a minute, and EVs. And you had a ride in this huge F-150, which is, and then you proceed to whine about your effort to go to Maine and couldn't find a charger.
That was pretty funny.
That was working. It seems to me that as a layperson here, just bought a Tesla a couple of months ago, despite Elon Musk. I swallowed hard and did it.
It's kind of hard to do, isn't it?
Well, it's hard. Oh, that part.
Yeah.
That part is hard.
Yeah.
But once you've done it, let me tell you, it is unbelievable. In any case, it seems to me that cost is still an issue, but the biggest obstacle for there to be exponential growth on the EV market, at least to me, is the charger issue. Tesla is not so much a problem, and non-Tesla a huge problem.
Yes, everywhere we went with this Ford Lightning, which is a fabulous vehicle. And I'm telling you, 0 to 60 in a pickup truck in less than 4 seconds.
That was incredible.
It's actually scary. It's actually scary. But anyway, finding a way to keep it charged on a long journey is a problem. If you have a Tesla, it's not a problem. He did a great job building that infrastructure.
Superchargers, yeah.
The superchargers are everywhere. It's not an issue. But for other manufacturers who have not invested similarly, it is the Wild West out there, and nobody's keeping these things maintained, and there's spotty coverage. Now, there is a chunk of money in the infrastructure law and the IRA to build more chargers because it is a classic chicken and egg problem. Who's going to build these expensive chargers when there's not enough vehicles and so on and so forth? So that will seed a little bit of change on that front. But the other thing is it's not just the long journey. Half of us have the ability, like you, Jim, to plug in your house at night, and you probably don't even think about on a day-to-day basis having to get to a charger. But what if you live in an apartment building, or if you live in a disadvantaged neighborhood? What are you going to do there? That's half the nation. And we got to figure out how to charge up those vehicles. Are you going to put chargers in all those developments that your previous guests were talking about? Maybe so. But we probably should have fast chargers all over the place so that people can get a quick jolt of juice.
By the way, I never say anything good about Elon Musk, but let me just say, he has agreed, he has agreed that the Tesla chargers are going to be adapted in such a fashion so that non-Tesla EVs can use them at greater cost, but still there'll at least be access in some sites, right?
It's the least he can do. He's providing 3,500 chargers out of his network of 17,000. I say we keep pushing him to do more of that. I mean, imagine if you went to a gas station and it only filled up, a certain brand of vehicle. We wouldn't tolerate that, right?
Now, Yetming Chang, we just talked with you about big batteries, as you put it, but since you're from MIT, we expect you to know everything about everything that's going on. So
he's the brain.
I mean, what other technologies are encouraging that our listeners may not know about?
Actually, Miles mentioned electric aviation. Right. Now, so that is really interesting. The batteries that will drive these electric vehicles, we need to get the amount of energy they store up by about 2x to just start to really poke at the electric aviation problem. And so, for folks like me, that's a new holy grail out there. Can we double or triple the amount of energy you can store in the same weight of battery? And
for flying out of Logan.
For flying out of Logan. Now, you won't fly transcontinental. You won't fly to San Francisco. You won't fly to London. But you'll be able to fly, let's say, to Pittsburgh. It'll be that 100, 200-mile, regional jet. Then it'll be silent. Imagine that. Right?
Oh my God, that's true. It is silent. That's one of the great things about the electric vehicle. Because I have a hybrid, and when it's really weird when people get in it, they don't know it doesn't make any noise. Your car makes no noise at all.
None.
But that was one of the things I thought was so encouraging about this film is that it said, things may not be perfect, but if we can, move toward eliminating a lot of what we're doing with fossil fuels and methane gas, that would be a big improvement.
Yeah, and some of the things that aren't quite so exciting, such as, at least to the consumer, cement and steel. We don't go out and buy cement and steel every year. Well, once in a while you do. But those actually have absolutely giant carbon footprints. Cement, this whole building's made of cement and concrete. That's the #1 industrial emitter of CO2. Right? Not so exciting. But if you walk down that sidewalk, go 50 yards. And you've covered enough cement and concrete, it's about 2 tons of CO2 that's been emitted to put that down.
Wow.
Right?
It's easy to take it for granted.
So what should we be making the sidewalks? Took me a little while. Okay, I got it.
Sorry.
You want to explain that too, or do you think we got it on our own?
But what should we be making
our
the
interpreter
sidewalks out of?
We'll continue to make them out of cement and concrete.
Yeah.
Right? But we have to decarbonize how we make it.
Okay.
So the way we make it is now 200 years old. And we have to reinvent these tools that enabled the Industrial Revolution. We have to reinvent the Industrial Revolution.
Well, that's what I like the Green Industrial Revolution line. May I ask Miles something about
you can do whatever you want.
So the other thing I thought was really encouraging, we talk a lot about heat pumps, and every time we do, we get all these emails from people saying, or text messages from people saying they don't work in the cold, and this is wrong and that's wrong. You had a whole big segment about these heat pumps in these big apartment buildings in New York City.
So here's the thing. There was a time when heat pumps would not have worked well in this climate. But like all things, they have improved.
Right.
And if you get a state-of-the-art heat pump right now, it's perfectly satisfactory for all but the coldest of the cold days here in Boston. And so it's time now to rethink this. I mean, when you think about we without even thinking twice about it, we're burning poison gas in our house to heat our house and more importantly, to cook our food with our kids beside us. There's all kinds of consequences to this. Lots of studies connecting it to asthma and many other diseases.
So we should get induction ovens, I guess, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Plug it into the grid. And, when you think about it, it sort of seems kind of caveman-y to be doing this. I mean, we're still lighting flames like this. We don't need to be doing this anymore. That transition will mean a lot to the climate and, frankly, to our direct health indoors.
I want you to know my daughter was watching your film with me 2 nights ago, and you know what she did yesterday? She bought an induction stove.
I am so glad to hear that.
Miles O'Brien.
Wait a minute, a stove top or a whole?
No, a stove.
A whole stove.
And you know what the
Wow.
oven is in this thing? In addition to being induction, it's also got an air fryer or whatever the hell is it?
Convection, air fryer, the whole thing. Yeah, it
but
does
I want to stay on this heat pump thing. Didn't you say in the film, there was it in 2020, Miles, I think it was, that there were more heat pumps sold than gas furnace?
Yes,
that's
crossover
stunning.
point has happened.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And you have this guy, is Donnell Baird, is he the guy who said we have to turn buildings into Teslas? Was that guy?
Yes.
Well, that was a great line. Here he is, one of the entrepreneurs featured in Chasing Carbon Zero. He founded a company that helps make electrifying buildings more affordable by bundling projects together. Here's Baird. Or not. Here he is.
This is capitalism deciding that there are trillion-dollar companies to be made addressing the climate crisis, that entrepreneurs who figure it out are going to make money, and there's going to be so much money to be made by bringing those solutions into the economy that we are going to make our venture capital returns. And you can choose to do business and make profits in a sector and in a way that helps people.
You know, this is for both of you, starting with you, Miles. It seems to me that government's role in this transition and the speed with which we do transition is huge. I mean, we know what happened in the most recent legislation, $550 million in climate stuff, including some of the stuff you mentioned, credits, rebates. How critical is government's participation in this thing, Miles O'Brien?
Absolutely essential. But I will point out that much of what we've seen so far has occurred with the free market voting. I mean, wind and solar, no matter which way you slice it, are cheaper than gas and coal now. It's winning in the market. But listen, the oil and gas, we could talk about all the ways it is subsidized. It's time now to put some bets on this realm to make sure those chicken and egg problems for chargers, for example, occur. Make sure that there are incentives for people to move to heat pumps and induction stoves. That will speed this along. The thing is, we've gone through transitions before. You know, we used to burn whale oil here in Boston, you know, when I was, well, not when I was a child. When I was a child. But now we've made transitions before, but usually those transitions take on the order of a century.
Right.
We don't have a century, so we need to, you know, put our foot on the, not the gas, but the...
Well, that was the argument when Biden and his supporters were arguing for funding for chargers. The Republicans in Congress are saying, if the public wants it, let the demand be such that the private sector does it. The bottom line is the planet's going to be on fire by the time that demand is met.
It's public-private partnership, no question.
So is there a public-private partnership in your iron air development?
Yeah.
There is.
There is. And, you know, both with the federal government and also with the state government in West Virginia. The goal, Form Energy's goal is to create 750 jobs there. The state subsidies won't be delivered unless we do that. And so these are great jobs. They're all kinds of jobs. They're engineering, manufacturing jobs. And I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to say that Form Energy is hiring. Right?
In West Virginia.
Well, Pittsburgh,
Somerville,
Berkeley, Pittsburgh, West Virginia. Over 100 jobs on the website right now, if you're interested.
I thought when you said I'd be remiss, my fear was you were going to say I'd be remiss if I didn't compliment Senator Manchin for his help with this, but you didn't go that far, so we're feeling a lot better. Thank you.
Speaking of Senator Manchin, I mean, the technology is there. Some of it needs to be perfected and figured out more in detail and stuff. But there is a political problem here. So how optimistic, given that political problem, are you?
Well, the jobs are apolitical.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the simple truth of it. You know, and
but they're not apolitical. With all due respect, if you don't believe climate change is an issue, then why do you have to help fund what you do? We don't need it because it's a hoax.
But when we go to West Virginia and offer up 750 jobs,
that's a good point.
You know, nobody is showing up. You can't tell who's Republican, who's Democrat.
Right.
Nobody in the room is beating a political drum.
What do you think about the political problem here?
I mean, I think the governor of West Virginia, who has coal lineage, is a huge supporter of this idea because it's jobs. It's jobs. Simple as that. Right. And I will say this: if somebody wanted to plan a career, if they were a young person and didn't necessarily want to go to college, become a heat pump technician. You will have a career for the remainder of your life. You will have a good job and a good paying job. Working in this sector is a very interesting idea. It kind of brings back the notion of the middle class in what we call the Rust Belt, now less pejoratively now, giving people good paying jobs who are not necessarily PhDs. And that is something this country lacks sorely. And that's good politics, no matter which side of the aisle.
Rust is a good word.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
And as you know, Russ never sleeps.
That's right. And
Neil Young just called in. He wants to thank you for that.
Well, also,
my God, this
when
guy.
you talk about heat pumps, I think a lot of people don't realize these heat pumps, they are also air conditioners and dehumidifiers.
All in one.
I mean, all in one, and you get money back. You get these rebates from the heat pumps, too.
So, Miles, can we continue
this?
this?
Expensive, but you get money back.
This exaltation for 3 more minutes with you, because I had the same reaction Marjorie did. The one thing we haven't touched on in terms of energy is a piece of your film is about geothermal energy, which obviously is potentially huge. But for those who don't understand it, which was me before I watched the film, can you fill in a few blanks for us?
Well, the basic geology of it is there's a lot of heat beneath our feet as we get more closer to the core of the planet. But getting to it is the problem, right? Up until this point, geothermal has been in seismically active places where the tectonic plates have put the hot water a little closer to the surface. So you can go to the Salton Sea or Iceland, that kind of thing. But imagine if you could drill down a little deeper affordably, and you don't necessarily need to hit a pool of water. What if you could drill 2 wells and push water in between the 2 wells, heat it up, and send it to the surface? Well, interestingly, this goes back to the irony we were talking about. The people best suited to do this are who pokes holes in the ground well? Oil and gas industry, right?
That's right.
And interestingly, the fracking shale boom has advanced drilling technology and lowered the cost to the point now where we can imagine geothermal almost anywhere to spin a turbine and generate electricity. And that is 24/7, 365, solves the problem of the intermittency of wind and solar.
So, do you have any more puns you want to use yet before you go? Or?
Hold on, all set.
Were you a stand-up when you were a kid, or what was the deal with you? So, you said there are a lot of jobs. If people want to check out your firm, where do they find you?
Formenergy.com.
Formenergy.com.
FORM.
By the way, the film is really terrific. I'm with Marjorie, and it really is. So we have Bill McKibben here every month, and he tries to bolster our spirits, but doesn't work. And you, and I have to say, you really got there. I mean, it's a wonderful film, and people should check it out tomorrow night.
That there's a lot of money to be made here.
Yeah.
Good jobs and good for investors and all that kind of stuff, which is pretty exciting as well.
Do you have a final pitch here, Miles O'Brien?
Well, I mean, that message has not gotten out.
No, I don't think so.
This is really important. We've allowed the fossil fuel industry to define a message that if we go in this direction, we will lose. It's not a lose-lose. It's a win on both sides of the ledger. So don't forget that.
Yeah, especially after the prices of energy that we've just been through this winter.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you
very much. Great to have you both. Great to meet you. And
You guys are great. I love you guys.
Well,
Thank you so much.
We're a big fan of yours, too. Pleasure.
Miles O'Brien is the director, producer, and host of Chasing Carbon Zero. Yetming Chang is a professor in the Department of Materials Science and Engineering at MIT, where they know everything, and he's a chief scientist at Form Energy, where they're hiring. FORM.com.
No.
Energy.com.
Formenergy.com.
Energy.com. Sorry about that.
When this thing dries up, we're going to be applying for those jobs, too. I want you to know.
Okay, Nova Chasing Carbon Zero premieres April 26, 9 o'clock.
Check it out.
On PBS. That's 9 p.m. on GVH2, and will be available for streaming online at pbs.org/Nova on Nova's YouTube channel and via the PBS video app. You're going to check it out. You'll feel so much better about the state we're in terms of the planet being on fire.
By the way, Nova's done a whole series of fabulous climate films through the years. Check them out. They're online. Just check them out.
Up next, We're going to talk to legendary investor and philanthropist Peter Lynch and all about his investing in the K-12 schools, particularly Catholic schools. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Is social media causing a decline in teenage mental health?
Smartphones were used by the majority of Americans around 2012, and that's the same time loneliness increases. That's very suspicious.
Researchers are now finding clearer links between social media use and anxiety and depression. I'm Elsa Chang. That story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business by offering cybersecurity, internet, and mobile solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. Comcast Business, internet required. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, a health plan connected to a world-leading healthcare system, committed to providing innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Learn more at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She is Marjorie Egan, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now by legendary Boston investor and philanthropist Peter Lynch. He ran the Magellan Fund for Fidelity Investments from 1977 to 1990, relatively successfully. We just say, I think, relatively successfully.
Very lucky. Yeah.
Historic returns for those who don't get it. He served for the past 33 years as chair of the Catholic Schools Foundation, where he'll be honored this Thursday night for his contributions, having helped raise over $116 million in support of life-changing scholarships for more than 60,000 students. Peter, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very, very much for being here, Peter Lynch. So as Jim just mentioned, you're being honored by the Catholic School Foundation. Why'd you decide to give such support to Catholic schools?
Well, my father took sick when I was 7, died when I was 10. My oldest brother, intellectually challenged. But I grew up in Newton. I had great public schools, incredible public schools. And that's the difference in America. 90% of your brain developed by age 6. Age 6. There's a lot of scholarships to go to college, but Boston has a 29% dropout rate. It's higher in Lawrence, it's higher in Lowell, higher in Lynn, higher in Brockton. Our inner city Catholic schools, the urban ones, 11,000 kids, 70% of color, 75% single family. These are parents working 2 jobs, still just slightly above the poverty level. And our schools aren't free. Unfortunately, we have to charge tuition. We wish they were free. We'd have lines around the block. So,
well, you do have incredible. I mean, I was just speaking to somebody at the Nativity School in Boston. I don't think a lot of people even know about that
you're right.
school.
Or Mother Caroline, or
tell us about a couple of these great schools in Boston.
We have Mission Elementary School in Roxbury, and what's great, we have pre-K programs. And as I mentioned earlier, Marjorie, how so much of your brain. These kids are in the top quartile by 2nd grade. We have programs for 2.5-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, all year. Great programs. So what can you do? This should be in all public schools.
Yeah.
We've given over $5 million to Boston Public Schools. Then we co-sponsored outdoor gardens in every public elementary school. We do STEM week with other people in every. So we want everybody the chance I had. You know, imagine they only measured the dropout rate entering 9th grade. Some boys go away 12, 13, 14. They just go away. You feel in Wellesley or Weston, where's Johnny? Where's Jack? It doesn't happen in a lot of places. So it's a tragedy in America. We're solving it. We've been doing this for 150 years. And 30% of the kids aren't Catholic. So we're doing it for needy children. Give them a great education.
What are some of the statistics that, when we read them, were overwhelming in terms of graduation rates, success in college, that sort of thing, Peter Lynch?
Yeah, 98% graduation rate. And we get them to high school. I mean, Jim, they don't realize how many people don't make it to high school in North Philadelphia, South Chicago. I mean, it's not fair that if you're in Andover, you have great schools. You have Butler Lawrence, the highest crime rate, the highest drug rate. We have a great school, Lawrence Catholic Academy. 95% are kids of color. They mostly speak Spanish. Great success, Jim.
So what's the difference?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what's the difference? I mean, your longer school day, smaller classes. What's the deal?
Well, in fact, the charter schools we've been a big supporter of. They have uniforms. They save $150 a year, but they look the same. No one looks poorer, richer. More academics, longer day, more discipline, but also they learn to love each other. They learn respect. They learn love thy neighbor. I mean, we teach that.
You know, it seems to me, Peter Lynch, and I'm guessing based upon what you've said so far that you would agree with this, as important as your work has been with these Catholic schools, a huge contribution would be if the best of what you see in those schools could be replicated in public schools that are failing. Yeah. Can it be? I mean...
Well, hopefully it can. I mean, it's just so unfair that half the people in America are having a poor education, half having a very good... They shouldn't be that way.
So what are the keys to success in the Catholic schools that you think could be replicated in public school settings?
Well, I think more academics, longer hours, more discipline. I think, I don't know the answer. I know our schools work, Jim. They really work. They've done it for 150 years. They speak 30 different languages in our school. 30. And I mentioned earlier, over 30% aren't Catholic. They just know this is a good way for their kid. They're working 2 jobs, most cases, to afford it. We're charging $6,000 or $5,000 for tuition. These people, they're paying monthly, and we give a 1/3 scholarship to 4,000 kids. We'd rather help one kid with a big deal. We're only helping 4,000 of 11,000 children.
And you were very involved as well at the Elliott School in the North End, right?
Yeah.
What were you doing there?
Well, want to upgrade that school. I mean, any chance we have to help children. I hate to say it, there's all this money going to colleges. And every now and then people get a $50 million check, $100 million check. They forget about ages 1 to 12. I mean, that's where the big hole is.
Yeah.
By the way, there's so many caricatures of you done. You look exactly like Peter Lynch. Is that no, it's stunning. Looking at you, it's unbelievable how similar you look. So, so there's this dinner Thursday night, which is honoring you after a mere 33 years. Are you going to be emeritus chair of the board after this?
I'm going to step back a lot because when our youngest daughter was 7 when I started. You can do the math. She's now 40.
Well, I can do that.
We have 10 grandchildren. It's like,
wow.
I mean, they were at home, so I'm trying to spend more time with our wonderful 10 grandchildren.
But what's the answer to my question? You're going to be emeritus, right?
I'm going to be emeritus. I will be involved. I'm not going cold turkey, but I'm going to try and still find prospects and help.
Okay, so I read one of your daughters said the goal is to raise $5 million Thursday night, which is a record amount. But there's also a special treat that is being offered. There's an auction. What would someone buy if they were to win the auction, Peter Lynch?
Well, we've copied the greatest investor of all time, Warren Buffett.
Yes, and?
He does a luncheon, and it raises like $20 million for charity.
Yeah.
We're trying to have a luncheon with me in my home. The winner gets it, and they invite 7 friends. I love meeting people.
BLTs and chips, or what are they getting?
We'll probably have lobster.
That's very nice.
So, by the way, to bid on the lunch with Peter Lynch, again, 8 people for the Catholic Schools Foundation. You can go to CSF, Catholic Schools Foundation, Boston.com, CSFBoston.com, or ebay.com/CSF. We'll give you that again in a second to win this lunch with Peter Lynch.
Peter Lynch, one of the reps or the things people complain about with charter schools is that they're not taking the kids with the special education issues, the kids that may have learning disabilities.
Cherry picking is the criticism.
Yes, they're cherry picking. And I don't know if that's true of the Catholic schools or not. I mean, because that is very expensive if you have a kid that needs to be shipped off to, I don't know where, to a special school. So what's your answer to that?
We're not cherry picking. In fact, one school, we're trying to add elevators. So we don't have elevators. The school is 1905 on 17 different levels. So we can have children that are disabled go there.
Yeah.
So I don't know the answer to how you solve people that have serious problems. I don't know the answer to that. Our teachers get paid 1/3 or half of public school teachers. They just love teaching there.
Isn't that a problem, though? Doesn't that trouble you? I mean,
it does. I wish we could double their salary. These are schools, there were parish schools, Jim, a long time ago. Mm-hmm. The parish is shrinking. The school's still there. And, we're trying to keep it existing.
You know, you've been doing this 33 years. By the way, he retired at 46 in 1990 after this insanely successful run. Well, you did. I mean, it is what it is.
That's
You're
right.
seeing-
Now he's going to teach his 10 grandchildren how to invest so that they can retire
and for the
young,
33
too.
years since, he's been leading this effort with the Catholic Schools Foundation. In the middle of this thing, particularly in Boston, we lived through the nightmare of the sex abuse crisis thing. How did you weather that? I don't mean you personally. I mean, how did the Catholic Schools Foundation weather that storm?
Well, fortunately, it's one of the heinous crimes of all time, these innocent children. But it was priests doing it. It wasn't nuns. It didn't happen in our schools. The schools weren't the issue. It was the parish priest.
But there is a trickle-down thing, right, in people's minds? Was that, how much did that inhibit your work? I just don't know.
Indirectly, it wasn't a positive. It was a terrible, it's awful. You can't describe how many adjectives you put on that. Terrible crimes are committed on the most innocent of innocent.
Yeah.
You know, I just wonder, because I'm a Catholic, and I don't know many that are still Catholics, actually. We're dropping like flies, and generally, and the next generation is dropping like flies.
Right.
You must have thought about this. If you were going to tell, especially in the United States, where a lot of people think that the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops is, they're going a little far to the right, some of the bishops. I mean, if you were going to advise the hierarchy on the LGBTQ stuff, the women discrimination stuff, spending millions of dollars as the Catholic Church has around the country to fight these abortion ballot things, but not really spending millions of dollars to promote the kind of government programs that would ease poverty that might make women less likely to get abortions. What would you tell them to do?
Well, I think they should talk about Catholic charities. It's the second largest provider of social service in the Commonwealth.
Yep.
They should talk about who founded the Pine Street Inn. 2 priests. I mean, we have shelters for women. It's in Dorchester. These are women come in that have children.
Yeah.
We have a pre-K for those children. They're in a shelter. I mean, imagine nuns going to Africa 50 years ago, 100 years ago. No flu shots. They're never coming back. They work in hospitals. They work in schools. And throughout the world, Catholics have done good things. And we did terrible things over the last, who measured these heinous crimes. And some people believe in, they have faiths. There's a debate on abortion. I can't go on that.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced anybody on it.
Yeah.
But there's so many good things. There's so many troubled people. There's so many tired people. There's so many sick people. There's people out of work. That's where the Catholic Church has done a great thing. And I think praying in the morning, praying at night, if you just say, thank you, God, I'm not in Sudan, I'm not in Yemen, I'm not in El Salvador. That's what we're saying. And then pray for somebody else.
Yeah, maybe public relations is a problem, maybe.
I hate to zero. Can we get back to this lunch thing for a minute? Where
Sure.
we're theoretically, again, you can go to csfboston.com. I assume you're not doing this. This is an odd kind of thing for you, is it, or is it?
Never done it before. Not my idea. It's a great one, though.
So do you give stock tips at lunch? What do you do at lunch? What do they get besides lobster? Come on.
I'll probably talk about stocks and
You will?
and the economy and what's happening.
Whatever they want to talk about, you'll talk about.
Yeah, we'll
Is
talk
that
about the Celtics and the Bruins. Yeah.
That's fair enough.
What is happening in the economy? Lots of people think we're heading to a recession.
Well, I
and
think-
people are very nervous.
Yeah, I think people are very nervous now. This is the best forecasted recession ever. Ever. Everybody's expecting it. I've never seen expectations. That's in every sentence. We've had 13 recessions, Marjorie, since World War II. We've had 13 recoveries. Perfect score. We've had 14 presidents.
What does that mean? We're overreacting? Is that what you're saying?
No, we should look to the other side. But most important, Jim, Marjorie, if you need the money in a year, you shouldn't be in the stock market. What the market's doing 1 or 2 years is always random.
Yeah.
When it goes down, I never know it's going down. Jim said wonderful things about I had a perfect record when I ran Magellan. 9 times the market went down 10 to 30%. Every time I went down more. The markets follow. And if you need the money, you send the kids to school, or you got whatever it is, you put money in a down payment in a house, you're not a good investor. Because when the market goes down, all of a sudden you start to worry, anxiety goes up. The key organ is the stomach. It's not the brain. We all know 10, 20 years from now, stocks will be higher. But when it's going down, the world's ending. 1980, you guys remember 1980?
Yes,
I wasn't born in 1980.
I remember.
We had double-digit unemployment, double-digit inflation. It was awful. People said the Japanese were going to kill us. Panasonic, Toyota, Honda, Toshiba. The Japanese, we were through. The Japanese are going to kill us. So we've had so many great companies come along since then. Local companies, Teradyne, Analog Devices, EMC.
Yeah, what you didn't have in 1980? A debt default. It seemed that you talk about recessions and whatever was 13 and 13 recoveries. We haven't had one of these, and there's brinksmanship yet again. That's a real problem. Isn't that a big worry?
Well, 1991, we had this terrible recession. Bank of England went under, a 150-year-old bank. Almost every bank in Texas went bankrupt. And then we have another terrible banking crisis in 08, 09, when people were borrowing money with a second mortgage, home improvement loan, and they're using it to buy a boat. There's no dock mortgages. I mean, things have really improved. The way they look at banks today are much different. Normally, the problems have been on the credit side. You made a bad loan. And they're doing a better job there.
But I'm talking about the debt ceiling. I'm talking about the federal government. And that we have not experienced before. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear before.
Oh, I'm sorry, my mistake.
No, I wasn't clear. That is potentially a nightmare in the offing pretty eminently, is it not?
That should not be a debate. That is so wrong. We should not be saying, we shouldn't run up to 11 o'clock at night and say we solved it. We should not worry about the debt ceiling. We should worry about the amount of debt we have, but that should not be a place to be navigating.
They should eliminate the debt ceiling, should they not?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but they should resolve it way before now. A year before it's due, they should resolve it.
Can we talk about, now you're a pretty good investor from what I said before, but apparently you were an even better caddy. Is that? No, I don't know if this stuff is apocryphal or not. Is it true that what we read is you caddied for Ned Johnson?
Well, actually.
What was the deal with that?
Well, I was really lucky. I got a job at 11 caddying at Braeburn. There's not a lot of golf courses in Roxbury. There was one in Franklin Park. But I caddied for the president of Fidelity, Mr. Sullivan, D. George Sullivan.
Oh, okay.
So he said to me, how would you like to come in for a summer job? So unless I punched somebody, there were 75 applicants for 3 spots. This is 1965. I come in for a summer job, I get the job. I mean, what a deal.
Absolutely.
And caddying was so great because you get the code, because the guys are talking about this person parties too much, this person drinks too much, this person doesn't work. The women didn't say a thing. Amazing. You're caring for a woman, talk about gossip. They don't say anything, nothing interesting. You walk in
How disappointing.
I know. The guys are telling all these stories. You learn what they respect. There was a lot of lessons. And we would grade people, Jim. Good golfer, good tipper, good person. So D. George Sullivan was a great person, a terrible golfer, and a great tipper. That we would rate everybody. I can still remember. I could rate everybody.
So is it true this would not have happened?
I would not have got that job.
It would not have happened.
I would not get that job. In fact, Natalie Jacobson's father, I caddied for him. He offered me a job at Gillette.
Yeah?
He played at Braeburn.
Was he a good tipper?
He was a very good tipper.
That's good.
He was a mediocre golfer, great guy.
So, and one last thing, because I can't believe this is true either. In some bio we were reading about you last night, beyond your caddying experience, which sounds like it was real, this can't be true. You had a caddy scholarship to Boston College? That is not true.
No, there's this famous program that people should know about. Francis Ouimet was a caddy at the Carlson when he won the U.S. Open.
He was?
He stayed in amateur his whole life, and just like Bobby Jones stayed in amateur their whole life.
Yeah.
He started a scholarship fund to give caddies, so people work at golf clubs. I caddied from 11 to 21. I got it's $1,000 to go to Boston College. I got a $300 caddy scholarship. I got 1/3 of it. I could work and make $700. I had zero debt when I left college.
That's pretty great.
So it's still today. It's expanded since then, Jim.
So Peter Lynch, we would be remiss if we didn't ask you, since I think it's something like half of the people in America don't have 401ks, not in the stock market.
Yep. Half of people over 55. It's even worse.
Yeah.
So if people, young people now in their 20s and 30s that might be listening, what's some wise advice you can give them about investing for their future?
Well, Marty, I think one of the things amazing is some people have their companies doing it, and they don't participate. And I've jokingly said, wait a second, that's a double every year. You put X in, you put a money market, somebody matches it.
Yeah.
Could I have yours? I mean, I haven't had a double every year. Imagine not participating in a 401k where it's a match.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to buy stocks. You put in bonds. You put in money markets. So it's a wonderful program to save money. And that's what, I have no idea what markets can do 2-3 years. What I do know is my whole career, 50 plus years, there's always something to worry about.
Right.
People don't worry about the debt ceiling. They're worried about recession. There's always something to worry about. That's part of it. And that shakes you out. You have to say, I should put X amount aside every quarter, every month. The long-term return on stocks from 28, we had a rather bad 29 with a crash and the depression. From 28 on, the market's gone up 10% a year. That's been your return. And it's been the same since World War II. So longer term, it's a good place to be, but it's a flip of a coin. It's 1 or 2 years. And people get shaken out too much. They should say, I'm in for this, whatever happens. And if you add when the market went down, you do even better than 10%.
But if you're in a job where there isn't the option for a 401k, what do you tell people then?
That's a terrible company if they're not offering that.
Okay.
That should be something, that's a given. Because it's hard today with the cost of everything to save money. This is an incentive to take it out of your pay. It's not taxed. It compounds tax-free. Find a company that has a 401k.
When you were hired, you were 33? Is that how old you were when you went to Fidelity?
No, much younger.
How old were you?
I don't know. What age was in 1965? I guess it was 21, yeah.
No, but I mean when you took over the Magellan Fund.
Oh, yeah, it was 33, yeah.
What kind of confidence did you have?
Well, the beauty of Fidelity is a lot of freedom, a lot of responsibility. They let you, my first stock was Taco Bell. I had to explain to Ned Johnson what a taco was.
Oh, God.
Is that true?
That's true. I did not get a burrito supreme. But I mean, I had to explain how good it was, and I bought La Quinta Motor Inns, I bought Four Seasons, I bought Long Island Lighting, I bought Fannie Mae, I bought Chrysler. A lot of freedom, a lot of responsibility. It's the best firm in the country.
What do you think of Abby Johnson's leadership? Speaking of the Johnson family.
So strong, so supportive, outstanding leader, yeah.
So, Peter Lynch, before you go, I understand that you had the opportunity to meet the famed Elon Musk.
We were just talking about him.
Who's endlessly in the news. We were talking about him before.
Good buddy of yours?
Well, what's the odds of this? We have a great son-in-law, my daughter Annie, married to Scott Lukowski. He got me to, 14 years ago, go to SpaceX. This is a one-on-one tour with Elon Musk. It was before they went public. I had a great time visiting SpaceX. I couldn't figure it out because people on ladders with screwdrivers and hammers. I said, can this thing work? So then we had a wonderful time. He calls me 2 years later. They're going public the next day. He's in Boston. He says, can we get together? I said, yeah, come over to my apartment. Karen was playing at a bridge tournament. So we had a couple drinks at our apartment. And then we went to dinner right next door. And I paid for the check.
Oh, no, really?
But he's a really smart. But the moral.
You were about to say wonderful guy, and you stopped yourself, didn't you?
Let's go on to.
Okay.
But the mistake was I looked at the company and I said, I'm not sure this car is going to sell. They had a plant in California they bought for nothing. I should have kept monitoring it because it's a little sketchy for 2 or 3 years. If I kept monitoring the story, our daughter Mary bought a Tesla. It is a great car. If I stayed tuned, I could have made 10 times my money. I fell asleep on that one.
Oh, well.
It's too bad because you're really suffering now. So that's really sad that you missed that opportunity. So Peter Lynch, this lunch deal again with Peter Lynch, you and 7 of your buddies, csfboston.com. All the proceeds is for the Catholic Schools Foundation, ebay.com/CSF. It's a thrill to have you, Peter. I hope you'll rejoin us.
Such a great show. Love you guys.
Thank you. You're so nice to say that. Thank you.
And the work you've done for these Catholic schools,
they
are great.
It's really
they are great Catholic schools.
Well, it's more the children. The children are so deserving. These are kids, imagine they're single parent, living in poverty, and they love coming to school. They don't miss one day. They come every single day.
And
well,
they
you should feel
go
good
from
about
those,
yourself.
And I know from the Nativity Prep go on to places like Philip Sandover, scholarships, St. Sebastian scholarships, so right through high school and then right on to college. So it's really doing the Lord's work, as the Catholics say.
I've been so
Peter
blessed.
Lynch.
No one's been more blessed than I have. A wonderful wife, 10 great daughters. I've been so blessed in my life. It's some way of giving back. That's my mother that taught me that.
It's pretty great. So Marjorie and I are going to pool some money. We'll see you at lunch.
Okay.
Thank you so much for
Peter
coming
Lynch.
in today.
Let's hear it for Peter Lynch.
Really
Thank you so much for your time.
Peter Lynch is a legendary Boston investor and philanthropist, and he's now transitioning from chairman to chairman emeritus of the Catholic Schools Foundation, and he's going to be honored by them. This is Thursday night, correct? This Thursday night. Peter Lynch, thank you very much for coming in. Coming up, CNN's Chief National Correspondent John King, listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
You can make a huge impact at GBH by donating your old car, truck, or other used vehicle. Your vehicle donation is what drives our station and allows us to keep delivering the news and civic discourse that you rely on. As the snow melts and you start your spring cleaning, let us help you declutter by taking your old vehicle off your hands. Learn more about our vehicle donation program at gbh.org/vehicle donation.
Support for GBH comes from you and A Blade of Grass, located in Sudbury, offering a wide range of landscape services to the Boston Metro West area, including landscape architecture, construction, and estate care. You can view their portfolio at abladeofgrass.com. And M&M Skylights, servicing Massachusetts and New Hampshire, their team is part of the Velux Skylight Specialist Network and is committed to helping improve the air quality in your home or business. You can learn more and schedule a consultation at mmskylights.com.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined by another of Boston's best, from Peter Lynch to CNN's chief national correspondent, the Dorchester Kid, host of Inside Politics weekdays at noon. That'd be John King. Hello, John.
Happy Tuesday. Busy day.
Great to see you.
Well, great to see you, John King. So let's start with from the political angle, and that's your area of expertise. How does the firing of Tucker Carlson impact politics in America? How this the presidential race is seen and played, and all that?
I don't know how it will impact going forward, but certainly, number one, he had become a sort of a driving force in the Republican Party, whether the issue was even what he acknowledges in his own text messages was lies, untruths about the rigged election, quote unquote. So he's exposed his own fraud, if you will, in his text messages in the Dominion suit. But his tone on whether it's a transgender issue, whether it's the immigration issues, whether it's about Biden's fitness for office, his tone and his issue selection has become a driving force in today's Republican Party. So what happens? Number one, does he reappear somewhere else? I think is an open question we need to watch for. And then number two, is this, did most of the reporting seems to say that Fox let him go, or they parted ways, I don't know what the right legal term is, because of his criticism of his own management, not because of his parroting Trump's election lies. And so is this a reset for Fox, or is just that they had an employee who was criticizing the management and they said no more? So I don't think we know that part. We certainly do know that one of the most vocal, combative, confrontational voices in today's conservative movement and Republican Party has lost his platform, at least for now.
So, John, much closer to home, you lost a colleague on the same day, Don Lemon, who was fired yesterday right after a show. As much as you can share with us, what's the feel inside your workplace?
There's a mix of that. This is all me. I was being a father yesterday after this all happened, and I'm here for my show today. And I also, I don't like talking about internal company business, and so I want to be careful here.
I understand.
But the management made this decision. Some of the issues had been quite public about questions that, controversies that Don waded into. Don and I have always gotten along fabulously. Whatever anybody out there thinks about whether Don should be or should not be on CNN, or should be or not be on the morning show, Don is a wonderful human being, and he's always been great to me. And so, and I feel the same way, actually. I just said what I said about Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson has a family. Tucker Carlson has children. There are people these are people who are losing their jobs, who have loved ones, and who have other lives outside of work. And so I would hope everybody would have some personal empathy for everybody who has to go through something like this. And then we could talk about the policy, the politics, of the other stuff as well. But look, it's a tough time here to lose someone who worked here for 17 years. I've been here for 26 years. Wow. I've been here a long time. And so there's internal stuff when that happens. There's a churn. People have different opinions about it. This is a workplace like anywhere else. It's a lot of curious people, and they have different opinions about it. The management says it's committed to the morning show, and we'll see how that is going forward. And I certainly, as a human being and as a longtime colleague, wish Don the best.
Talking to John King from CNN. So, John, yesterday we spent time with our listeners talking about how the two likely nominees, this is the day before Joe Biden announced his candidacy this morning, the two likely nominees, 70% of the American people don't want the incumbent to run, and 60% don't want his likely challenger, Donald Trump, to run. Do you step back and think at all about how we got into a situation where there is that kind of feeling, yet we're likely to have both those men as our nominees?
I think it's kind of a blending together of political disaffection, which a lot of people have across partisan lines. Democrats can be disaffected too. COVID exhaustion, inflation exhaustion. The last 3 or 4 years have everybody tired, right? Your legs are tired and you want to turn the page. We want a new chapter. We want a post-pandemic chapter. We want a post-inflation chapter. We want, some stability in our lives after 3-4 years of constant volatility. And so you're looking to move on. So some of it is about them personally. A lot of Democrats think Biden's too old. They're grateful he evicted Donald Trump from the White House, and they think that was his mission, go. Biden would make the case, Donald Trump might come back. You need me again. That's for the voters to decide. Trump also has not quite the age question that Biden has, but he also is not a young man. He would be older by presidential candidates historically, but I think in his case, it's more the chaos and the legal jeopardy. But despite what people say in the polls, as of today, I think the most likely scenario, Donald Trump is the formidable frontrunner in the Republican primaries. Joe Biden does not have a serious challenge for the Democratic nomination. So I think elections are always about change. Elections are also always about moving on. I do think you see it in the Feinstein situation in California. Yeah. There's this generational thing bubbling up that it's time for the older guard to get out of the way and let the next generation come in. However, the incumbent president of the United States wants a second term. And the former president of the United States still has a very strong hold, maybe not quite as strong as it once was, but a very strong hold on his Republican Party. And so until somebody can take it away from him, it looks like the rematch, the sequel that nobody wants.
Speaking of the former president, we had an announcement from the down from Georgia, where the president was trying to get former President Trump was trying to get 11,000 votes, trying to get the Secretary of State, that Raffensperger, I believe his name is, to find 11,000 votes. That was the quote, 11,000 and change votes. The district attorney down there announced that that the charges or something may happen, whatever's going to happen, was going to happen between July and September. And I was so confused by that because I thought, well, they've had a grand jury sitting all this time. Now they're announcing there may be something, Fani Willis, between July and September. Is that weird?
It is. Well, it's interesting. It's unusual, certainly, for a prosecutor to publicly lay out the timeline. Sarah Murray, one of our great correspondents who's been working this story, and she's a great reporter, was just on my show, and she said two things. Number one, they wanted to alert the local authorities. They weren't saying there would definitely be charges against high-profile people. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump is on the list of potential high-profile people there. So is Rudy Giuliani. So are many other people. A lot of prominent Georgia Republicans who helped with the fake elector thing and tried to lean on Raffensperger and the governor to overturn the election results. So number one, Fani Willis sent a letter to local law enforcement saying that I just want you to prepare if there are charges here. It could be a security situation. But the more interesting part to me was Sarah's reporting that a number of people who are involved in the investigation are now raising their hands saying they want to cooperate more. And so part of the adding time, if you will, why aren't we ready? The grand jury wrapped up. To your point, Marjorie, why aren't we ready already? Make a decision. Is that they have some new people cooperating that's adding new testimony to the case, which is why she decided to lay out a timeline. It is unusual for any prosecutor to publicly say, this is when I'm going to do something. You think they get to the finish line, they have a meeting, they say, go, let's go today. Odd, but we will wait. That's a very consequential issue. Again, not just for Trump. There are a lot of other people there with potential liability.
Can I ask you two more presidential race questions, even though you're a year and a half away? There was a story in the New York Times yesterday mentioned that while there were obviously a lot of accomplishments on the climate front by Joe Biden, including the largest appropriation, and obviously in what passed last year, $550 billion or some such thing, the decision to sign off, they approved the Willow Project in Alaska on this pristine federal land is so high profile and so painful, particularly for so many young climate activists who people believe were instrumental in the election of Biden and the defeat of Trump, that they may just decide, intellectually, he may be good on this, but I just can't get involved. I can't vote for this guy. How worried are the Biden people about this?
They are worried, Jim. They also believe, though, that when confronted with the alternative, whether it's a Donald Trump or a Ron DeSantis or somebody else on the Republican side who flatly denies climate change or who flatly says there's no federal role in trying to mitigate the climate crisis, that those voters will say, I'm, essentially to hold your nose, I'm mad at you about this, but you have done these other 3, 4, 5, 8, or 10 things for me. But you hit on what I think is a giant point. On the climate issue is part of it. Younger voters who want generational change, who might have a disagreement on another issue. Biden does not have a significant primary challenge. The gift of that, if you're the Biden political operation, is that you can make a list of your weaknesses. And while the Republicans are having their debates and their fights and trying to figure out who the nominee is, even though Trump is the favorite, they have to go through that process. The Democratic incumbent, absent a primary challenge, can start working on those weaknesses. And I think part of it is communicated to them. We know you're mad about this. Look at the full record. They have the time. Now they have to raise the money and the resources to communicate directly. Take your hits, if you will, and say, but we're still way better than the other guys. That is a giant challenge on the climate issue and on a number of other issues where you could have a little despondency or just apathy among Biden coalition voters that he will absolutely need next November.
John, you may know this. My third favorite political analyst after me is Marjorie Egan.
Oh, that's right.
And Marjorie Egan has been saying for ages, let me paraphrase, tell me if I'm correct. As soon as America gets to meet Ron DeSantis is cooked. And I ridiculed her position. And it appears, I know it's early, and you always say to us, polls are just one snapshot of a moment in time. There was one poll that came out in the last couple of days in which, I don't know, it was a month ago, I think, DeSantis was beating Trump by some low double-digit number. And a month later, Trump is beating DeSantis by the exact same low double-digit number. What has happened? Assuming the polls at the moment are accurate, even if only a snapshot of this moment, what's happened to this DeSantis candidacy before there even was one?
I think it's a combination of things, but number one is his own performance. He has not inspired people when he's been traveling on his book tour, which we all know is the prelude. He's been very clear that he would not announce until after the Florida legislature finishes sessions in May. He's on this world tour right now, and he gave a very strange answer. You watched the video.
Japan.
What he said wasn't the issue, is how he said it and what he looked like when he said it. When he was asked about when are you going to announce, he said, well, I'm not a candidate yet. And it was kind of a bizarre, maybe it was jet lag, I don't know. And part of it is the rally around Trump because of the indictment on the criminal charges in New York. There's been a rally around Trump movement. And so there is no question that Ron DeSantis did not get, when you step onto the national stage, you want your trajectory to be up. Right. His was flat and it is now down. And so this is the test, Jim. It happens to everybody. Barack Obama was a lousy candidate at first. People forget that. He would give very long-winded speeches. He would not leave town halls. He was not a great candidate at first. And he learned the lesson, right? His staff put him in the room and said, we got to work on this, sir. And he did, and he became an exceptionally good candidate. Can Ron DeSantis, this is a great test. You want to be president of the United States? Show me how you deal with failure. Show me how you deal with difficulty. Show me how you deal with setbacks. As my dad used to say, you're going to get knocked down a lot. The challenge is, get up. And so let's watch. This is a big test for Ron DeSantis.
I saw the governor of Virginia, Youngkin, over in Taiwan. I wonder what that was all about. He's been mentioned as a possible Republican presidential kind of guy.
Not this time, though, he has said. He still has time to change his mind, but he says he's there on a trade mission, which is why Ron DeSantis is there as well, trying to bring some jobs and bring some business and industry to their states. Governors do this. It's part of their job. Because DeSantis is likely to run for president, he's going to get a bit more of a spotlight. You make a key point, though, again, Marjorie, though. When Youngkin won, everybody thought, here's this sort of a different guy in a purple state. Yes, he's conservative, but he's not Trumpy. He doesn't have that tone, sort of the caustic, in-your-face tone. Is he the next generation of Republicans? The fact that he has decided not to run in 2024 tells you something. It tells you that a lot of the people who wished and hoped and believed after January 6th that Trump would go away were wrong. Again, he's not as strong as he used to be, but he still has a pretty strong grip. He's going to be tough to take the nomination from him.
John, we just talked to Peter Lynch briefly about, we talked to him more than briefly, but briefly about this debt ceiling crisis. I guess I have two questions. Is one, where are things? Well, I guess it's the same question. And two, Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, finally came out with a plan after being challenged repeatedly by President Biden to come out with a plan. He came out with it, and the biggest story, including on your network, is can he get enough votes amongst his own members to move this to the Senate? What's the answer to either or both of those questions?
Well, the where are we is the House has to go first because everybody's waiting. The Democrats are waiting to see if McCarthy can pull this off. And so it's a negotiating blueprint. Nothing in the Republican plan will ever become law because of the Democratic Senate and Joe Biden, but it's just to give him a blueprint. This is what we want, right? And the president, again, says this has to happen on two tracks, right? Will the president blink? We will see. But the president right now says, no, on the debt ceiling, we vote to increase the debt ceiling. That's what we've always done. Then I'll have a conversation in the budget process about spending limits. But the first test is Kevin McCarthy a strong speaker? Is Kevin McCarthy capable of bringing his party along? This vote was supposed to be voted on, Jim, tomorrow on the House floor. There are indications already this afternoon, they're not done yet, that they're going to delay that vote. What does that tell you? McCarthy can only afford to lose 4. I can list you right now 10 Republicans who say they're not there yet. At some point, the leader of any organization, especially a political party, has to be able to go into the room and say, I know you disagree with me. Take one for the team. You have to vote for this. We are done. I cannot give you any more concessions because if I give you something, I lose them. So this is the best we got. Nobody's thrilled with it. We need a position. I'm your leader. They need to view me as credible. They need to view me as strong. You're going to vote for this. I need that. And you have to take one for the team sometimes. And so can Kevin McCarthy do that? If he fails on this, it's not just about the debt ceiling. His authority as speaker, his authority as leader will be significantly undermined. This is the first big test.
So basically, it's Trump and DeSantis, and that's it? I mean, there's no one else.
Well, I mean, Nikki Haley gave a speech today in Northern Virginia trying to say that even anti-abortion, pro-life Republicans, as she is, she says we need to be more compassionate about this. We need to recognize the other side. We need to reach out for a consensus. Tim Scott tries to be more optimistic. Asa Hutchinson, the former governor of Arkansas, announces that noon hour tomorrow that he's running. At the moment, though, it's Trump and DeSantis at the top of the pack, and everybody else is way down. Now, there is time, but history also tells you sometimes these things do move. Can somebody, upset the apple cart, change the dynamic in the conversation among Republicans, or most Republicans, let me put it this way, I'm rambling a bit, but most Republicans believe there will be a moment where if Trump wins the first couple of contests, where the party has to stop and think, are we really going to do this again? And so you want to be the reasonable alternative, the leading alternative when that moment happens. Right now, that's Ron DeSantis. Will it be somebody else by January, February, March of next year? That's the challenge if you're anybody but Trump or DeSantis.
He seems like the unreasonable alternative to me, DeSantis. Because he's so cruel.
I suspect you're not voting in a Republican primary in either Iowa or New Hampshire.
Well
or South
put,
Carolina.
my
Just
friend.
A guess.
Yeah.
Just a guess.
Okay.
Hey, John, it's great to see you. Thanks for your time as always. Really appreciate it. Be well.
John King, thank you very, very much. I always love to see you, John King.
We do indeed.
John King is the chief national correspondent for CNN, the host of Inside Politics. You can watch weekdays at noon. And John, of course, is a Dorchester guy. Coming up, this is what Jim wanted to talk about today.
Oh, you do this all the time.
Because he has very close attachment to Tupperware.
Well, that part is true. I do,
He
actually.
brings in his little containers of Tupperware,
Okay.
like 5, 6, 7, or 8 of them to the office every day. Not here today because he's
Not
going to the
today, no.
library, but tomorrow the Tupperware will be back
That's true.
in full regalia. Anyway, we want to ask you about relationship with the legendary food containers because apparently Tupperware is in big trouble. It is the end of the Tupperware era. Your Tupperware Tales up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
National unemployment is near historic lows, but layoffs across tech and media sectors continue to make headlines. So what do you do when you've learned that your gig is up? Literally. We can throw a party, of course. A pink slip party. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's just what we're doing next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the University of Massachusetts Amherst Mount Ida campus in Newton, connecting students and employers in Greater Boston and offering on-campus graduate and pre-college programs. Learn more at umass.edu/MIC. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings featuring Jane Fonda, Van Jones, former Ukraine Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch, and presidential historian Michael Beschloss. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News, youtube.com/GBH News. The end of a direct sales giant may be nigh. Tupperware is warning it could go out of business after 77 years of selling lids and containers. Marjorie is pretending she's not bereft. I am. How can a brand name so ubiquitous we use as a catch-all for any food storage vessel like Kleenex go under? Are you like me verklempt? Where will I store my gazpacho now? Or are you like Marjorie, pretending she doesn't care, hoping that this may bring about a more environmentally friendly, plastic-less funeral? So essentially, in the remaining minutes today, we want to know about your relationship through the years with Tupperware. 877-301-8897.
Well,
it's been a really important part of my life. Did you ever have a Tupperware party?
No, I never had a Tupperware party. Did you, Jim?
Many.
Yeah, I think we should start with your relationship with Tupperware. You are famous or infamous for bringing in like
little containers,
4 or 5 little containers with all your little snacks and snacklets and all that kind of stuff.
Snacklets. It's particularly good for snacklets. It's important. You can stack them up. And by the way, I have to say, I actually do seek out, because I think it's higher quality, a little more expensive, real Tupperware. What I said a minute ago is people call every a tissue for your nose or whatever it's
Kleenex.
called Kleenex, even though it isn't all Kleenex.
That's right.
Everybody calls all this stuff Tupperware. I spend a few extra bucks for Tupperware.
A few extra bucks.
But you know what the problem is?
No, Jamie,
they only started selling in stores not so long ago, which may be why they're going under.
Well,
it's fairly hard to find it.
When you go into stores, our staff did some research. Jamie gave me the information here. You can get a plastic food storage container at Target, 6 of them, for $11. Guess how much 7 Tupperware containers cost?
How much?
$189.
Yeah.
That is the problem, right? People are not going to spend an extra $180, I don't think, to get Tupperware.
Well, can I tell you something? I've always found, I know it's expensive, I always found Mr. Tupper and Mr. Ware to be people who we can respect and the quality of their product. Here is some relevant sound from an episode of Seinfeld. This is where Kramer lends his Tupperware to a man on the street.
There you go, brother. Some food for you. Thank you. You're a good man. Bless you. Now, you're going to be here in an hour? Where am I going? All right, enjoy. Hey, wait up! Hey, man. Did you enjoy the food? Yes, I did. Listen, I'll take that Tupperware now. I don't think so. That's not. You gave it to me. No. Look, I didn't say you could keep it. See, I don't give away Tupperware. Well, you should have said something. Well, I didn't think I had to. Look, with a piece of Tupperware, you just assume.
The number is 877-301-8897. What's your relationship to Tupperware? And by the way, even if it isn't Tupperware, I'll be a little bit more permissive today. Plastic, I'm as concerned about plastic as you are. Plastic containers are really a way to be economical in terms of your food consumption and to have the things that make you happiest in terms of food during the day.
Well, you can get glass containers like Pyrex.
Well, again, that's a real problem if you have 5 or 6, as I often do. In all seriousness,
they break.
They break and they make loud noises, and it's a real problem.
Yeah, well, I think you can get them for your refrigerator. Texter just says, not only is Tupperware now a problem, but Stop and Shop on 430 will start charging 10 cents for paper bags.
A lot of places charge 10 cents for paper
They do?
bags. Of course they do.
I didn't know they charged 10
depends.
cents.
I mean,
thought
if you're,
it was a nickel.
Well, it depends.
But here's the thing with plastic containers in general.
What is it?
If you get takeout food, 90% of the time they're in unrecyclable
I know that.
plastic.
So what's your point?
It's very upsetting. At least Tupperware, you can use it over and over again. I don't know if you can put it in the microwave or not because I don't use Tupperware. Can you put it in the microwave?
You can put it in the top rack.
You can put it in the top rack of the microwave. Okay.
If you put it in the bottom rack, it contorts into like a little.
And when you go to most
shape.
stores and you buy anything that's that's like if you buy those mashed potatoes, pre-made mashed potatoes, those are in plastic. So when you think about all the plastic we use, that's the one good thing about Tupperware, is that you can reuse it all the time. A lot of the plastic you can't reuse all the time.
Exactly, another good reason.
It's not strong enough.
Do you have any sentimentality in you at all?
I never went to a Tupperware party in my life, Jim. It just wasn't kind of my thing. But, I know you have a very close relationship with Tupperware. And
I do.
And, more power to you.
During Lex Pledge, we will have Jim and Marjorie Tupperware with the final Tupperware sale, actually, going out of business.
But that's the way you bought it all the time, was Tupperware parties. People come over to your house.
Isn't that the only way you could buy it? Wasn't it direct sale kind of stuff?
It was direct sale. Yeah, it was direct sale, kind of like the Fuller Brush man that came to your house. The Tupperware party came to your house. And I think people had fun with them. But I think the problem is that if you can get 6 containers, plastic food storage containers, for $11, and the Tupperware is going to cost you $189, I think
that's
your
a
choice
significant differential.
is fairly clear. 877-301-8970. Let's go to Barry in the car. Thank you, Barry.
Hey, Barry.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I just have a funny story, which is my sister, who is 83, started collecting Tupperware when she was a new bride in the early 60s.
That's a beautiful story.
She still has her original Tupperware, and she always hand washes it. We have disagreements because I think she should put it in the dishwasher to clean it. But then again, she still has her original Tupperware.
Wait a second. Her Tupperware, wait, Barry, is 60 years old?
Yes.
There you go. Will survive the nuclear holocaust.
But go ahead. You were going to say something else about her. Go ahead.
Well, the only thing I worry about is it safe? Is the plastic that from back then safe?
Well, I mean, with all due respect, your sister's 83. And if it's not safe, exactly, I would say it's fine. Barry, say hi to your sister, and thank you very much for the call. 877-301-8970.
There's a horrible story from just, was for a few years ago now in the New York Times, but we have it for this morning about the types of plastics families should avoid. There's a lot of horrible plastics out there that will do terrible things. I mean...
Yeah, but the horrible thing, what is it, BPA, bisphenol? I don't know if you can pronounce it. That has been not in Tupperware for like 15 years. Do you know that?
BPA. They've taken it out of
taken out Tupperware,
because they used to have it in there. But they were talking about flagellates or something like
Pardon me, what are they?
I can't pronounce it.
Say it again.
Flagellates.
Flagellates, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're typically added to plastics to make them pliable and soft. So you want to make sure, the plastic that you have is not going to be killing you. 877-301-8970. Susan from Newburyport. Thank you for calling.
What's up, Susan?
Hi.
Hi.
I actually knew Mr. Tupper.
Of course you did.
You're kidding.
What was he like? I've heard a lot of things about him. What was he like?
Well, he was kind of a mad scientist type inventor.
Yeah.
I grew up in Shirley, Mass.
Okay.
He had a greenhouse there.
Oh.
And my father used to cut his hair because he was the town barber.
Oh, wow.
And they used to trade haircuts for Tupperware.
That is fabulous.
And, yeah, I still have a couple pieces of the original Tupperware that my mother got years and years ago.
But wait a second, wait. Susan, you, Tupper is from Massachusetts?
Yes, he had I'm not sure if he was from there, but he lived there.
Oh, they say he was from Leominster. Our colleagues say Leominster.
Did you know that?
Leominster?
Mr. Tupper, a legendary Massachusetts.
Mr. Tupper, he had a greenhouse, and it was kind of his laboratory, and in Shirley, Mass, where I grew up.
Shirley, wow.
Do you remember Mr. Tupper's first name, Susan?
Oh, gosh.
Mr.
No,
Tupper.
I don't, because I was just a young person.
Of course you were.
And I always called him Mr. Tupper.
Well, you should have.
Our staff is looking it up. I believe his name was Earl.
Earl
Does that
Tupper.
sound right? Earl Tupper.
Earl Tupper.
I like just plain old
Hey,
Mr.
Susan,
Tupper.
that is a fabulous... Was he a good tipper, your father said, or not?
What's that?
Was he a good tipper after the haircut, or no?
Oh, I don't think he tipped in Tupperware.
Oh, that's right. He tipped in Tupperware.
He tipped in Tupperware.
That is a beautiful, talk about bartering. That's the way the world should be. Susan, that was a fabulous story. Thanks for sharing it. We really appreciate it.
Wants to know if you can get Tupperware at Bed Bath & Beyond. I guess
they're going out of
they're
business,
biting
too.
the dust too. And that's another place that I think became very expensive, and lots of people didn't go there because they could go to Target instead.
Because they could also buy stuff online. That's the problem. You can buy
stuff online.
And it's not exactly like a neighborhood business, even though thousands of people are probably going to lose their jobs, right?
Now, another text, I know, which
what?
is very sad.
Okay, fine.
Another texter says, what I will miss most about Tupperware is not so much the run-of-the-mill containers, but the innovative, clever products they came out with, like salad spinners, rice cookers. Knockoff products don't seem to put that much effort into innovating. You're a big Tupperware man. Do you have a Tupperware salad spinner?
Well, you know, it's funny you say that. And this is a true story. I do.
You do?
Why don't you ask
I
me?
knew
Excuse
you
me.
would.
Why don't you ask me if I use it?
Do you use it?
No, I do not.
Oh.
Because let me explain to you why I don't use it. If you had one, you'd know it.
Yep.
If you do it like this, you know, you around and around
for like 10 minutes.
It takes no, it doesn't. It takes a minute or so, and then you have to wash the damn thing. So instead, if you just under the sprayer function or your thing, you just spray it and squeeze it, and you've accomplished pretty much the same goal.
I don't think so. I think actually the Tupperware salad spinner gets more moisture
Well, it does
out.
get more moisture out,
Yeah.
but then you have to wash the thing.
Well,
you know what I'm
rinse
saying?
it out, Jimmy. Just kind of
What
run
are
it
you
under.
telling me? You don't have a salad spinner from Tupperware?
I have used a salad spinner, not lately, but I have used
Why?
one in the
Why'd you
past.
stop using it?
Because I do the cheap thing and buy, or the
Oh,
expensive thing,
pre-washed.
buy the pre-washed
Yeah.
at the market, which I probably shouldn't do.
Can't believe you're buying that story.
Sylvia from Brookline, what is your
What's your deal,
relationship
Sylvia?
to Tupperware?
Hi.
Hello.
Hello to you.
Thanks for having me on.
And thank you.
I'll tell you, first of all, I'll make a comment about Lowminster. It's an area that I think is famous for plastic molding things.
Leominster.
Well, whatever.
Leominster, yeah,
Close
Leominster.
enough,
So, also the older Tupperware stuff was made out of polyethylene, which is indestructible.
Beautiful.
I mean, your chemistry lab has polyethylene bottles. Okay?
Does?
Yeah. Well, yes, chemistry labs do, and I still have some of my polyethylene Tupperware.
That's fabulous.
It will.
How many
last
years do you
out-
think you've had it, Sylvia?
Oh, about 40, 50.
40 is about right. Yeah. Now, if you ever, it sounds like you're the kind of person who might have either been to or hosted a Tupperware party.
I hosted back in. My husband had a job at MIT.
Okay.
And we first moved here in 1966.
Yeah.
And somewhere around there.
Yeah.
The Tupperware lady, to have a party, and I said, okay, can it be co-ed?
Oh.
All right.
What was the answer?
Maybe one of the earliest co-ed
Wow.
Tupperware parties ever.
That's
And
groundbreaking.
it happened around Halloween, and it was a costume party.
Wow.
Wow.
Are you listening to this?
I'm listening.
A co-ed costume Tupperware party?
That must have been rather exciting,
It was
Sylvia.
great. It was great. These are all young scientists and so forth.
Sylvia, were people trading partners at this event or no?
Wife swapping?
It wasn't into partners.
Okay, I just
swapping.
I'm asking. I'm not insinuating anything. But go ahead, Sylvia.
And anyways,
Yeah.
no, they had a 5-room apartment. We had a lot of people in there.
I bet
Anyway,
you did.
I guess she did pretty well. The guys bought plenty of stuff. and,
That's great.
And anyway, so yes, it was a little. She said it was different than she was certainly used to, but I think she really liked it. So I think we were on the cusp of the big changes.
You were on a cutting edge. Sylvia,
yeah.
that was probably the first co-ed Tupperware party like ever.
I didn't even know
Sylvia,
they
thank
existed.
you.
That's wonderful.
We're having history-making
Gender neutral.
callers.
Okay, we have a texter who wants to know if either of us have ever visited the Tupperware Museum in Orlando, Florida. The texter says, I have. It's a great experience, a trip down memory lane. Maybe next time Jim is at Mar-a-Lago, he can swing by. And many people say, Jim, they have given up on Tupperware. You know why?
No, I don't.
Because they've switched to Pyrex. This is a person that says, I am stunned by the Tupperware chaos. I stopped using it 35 years ago. Pyrex makes excellent glass storage containers that can be reused for years and years. This person also
Wow.
has a collection of vintage glass containers
Now-
and says, stop the chaos.
Have you ever been to the Tupperware Museum?
I have not been to the Tupperware
Yeah,
Museum.
I have.
I think it should be the top of your list.
I've
You go
been
to
there.
Orlando, forget Disney
Been
World,
there.
forget Universal Studios, forget all those things down there, right? What's the other thing, the big thing down there in Orlando? They get another big thing, I forget.
SeaWorld
what it's
or
called.
something?
SeaWorld, something
Yeah,
like
the
that.
killing
Yeah.
whales or whatever
The
they're
place
doing.
to go, I think,
Yeah,
can we
the
all
Tupperware
agree, is
Museum.
Tupperware Museum.
And by the way, when you
And
get
what you
there,
can see-
the guy who greets you at the door is Earl Tupper. He's 130. Meets you at the door. He also cleans the bathrooms.
Yeah.
He's doing everything.
You can
Because
just-
they're falling on tough times.
You know, you wonder-
Marjorie's going to hold up a picture which no one
I'm
can
going to hold up
see.
a picture.
Go ahead. Oh, maybe they can.
Am I even on Zoom?
Oh, there you
I'm not
are
even
on
sure.
Zoom. You
There I am.
actually are.
Yeah, you go to the
What is that a
Tupperware
picture
Museum,
of? Yeah.
and this is what you see. You
Yeah.
see a bunch of Tupperware containers.
Well, what
on
else would
top
you
of
see? It's
each
a
other.
Tupperware Museum.
And I tell you, your day is made.
Yeah.
No question about
Yeah.
it. Christine in the car.
We're going to be auctioning that off during the next pledge break, too.
Christine in the car.
Yeah, first
What's
prize,
up with you?
1 week at the Tupperware Museum. Second prize, 2 weeks at the Tupperware Museum. It's an old joke, but
You
it worked.
can't beat it.
No, you can't.
Christine, thank you for calling.
What's with you, Christine?
Yeah, what's with you in Tupperware?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I used to actually sell
Tupperware, and Elman is seat dealer, and like Cyrex, the older Tupperware is actually collectible now.
I didn't know that. That's incredible.
Really? Wow.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Could you make any money? Could you make any money, Christine, selling Tupperware?
A little bit, not a lot, but fun. It's fun to collect it too.
Well, another satisfied, Christine, that was an excellent call. There's a lot of happiness around Tupperware and a lot of sadness that it may be closing after 77 strong years.
Now, we have a couple of texters here.
What are they?
One of them says there should be a Jim and Marjorie smug Tupperware.
I think there should be.
The next thing we do, the smug mug should have you with holding all your Tupperware containers. Not only do you have the Tupperware containers, but you have them all wrapped up in elastic bands. Which
I
I
do,
guess
so
means
the top doesn't fall off.
doesn't fall off because we have Gary from Brockton who's
What do you
very
say?
upset because his Tupperware organization is abysmal. He can never match his containers with their covers, and that is
That's a
indeed,
problem.
Indeed,
That is a
very
real problem.
frustrating. Alice from Kingston still has her avocado green measuring spoons and measuring cups from 1973 made of Tupperware.
Yeah, you know where they sold it? That barber shop where Earl Tupper got his haircut. That's where she got him in 1932.
Do we
Okay,
have-
we're
do we
done.
have- oh, we're
No,
done?
we're done.
Oh,
We're
we
done
can't
like
get to any
2
more
minutes
calls.
ago.
Okay,
The show's
all